Hi, welcome to Talk About the Passion. My name is Christian Campagna, and this is episode number 39, Chemistry. I named this episode Chemistry after the song by Rush from their record Signals. This particular record is a big record to the three people talking here, myself, Brian Smith, and Guy Wetherbee. That, mixed with the immediate chemistry between the three of us, it seemed like a no-brainer for the title. So, yeah, my episode today is with two people, Brian Smith and Guy Wetherbee. Collectively, they have a group called Four Way Anal Touchfight, which they explain in detail towards the end of the episode. I never knew the story of this project, and it's a pretty cool story, so you'll hear that. I met Brian a number of years ago through our mutual friend Jonah Jenkins, who has also been on this podcast. At a party Jonah had, Brian and I became good friends online after this party, and we've always had a mutual respect for our musical taste and what music means to us. And Brian had told me Jonah had wanted to introduce us as he thought we would hit it off, so he got us in the same room, which I'm glad he did. When I initially started this podcast and started messaging people to do it, I had asked Brian if he was interested, and he was a little hesitant, claiming nobody would know who he is or something to that effect. My aim with this podcast, though, since day one has always been to document whoever wants to talk to me. I've stressed it before on here, and this is obviously a rhetorical situation, but if someone came to me and said, you can interview someone from, say, Minor Threat, I would probably pick Steve Hansgen. You don't hear much about him. Ian and Jeff and Brian have told their story countless times, and it's great, of course, but I want to hear stories you never hear. And, just to be that guy, I already interviewed Lyle Pressler when I was like 16. So, yeah, those stories and people who, really get it and like to talk about whatever their passion is, obviously they're, going to make the best guests here. What I'm trying to say here is, Brian and I discussed getting him on again a couple months ago, and he suggested bringing Guy along. And we got together on a Saturday afternoon about 2:30, and I left 12 hours later with a little over 2 hours of a podcast and plans to have the both of them do some subject-specific episodes in the future. I'm still going to do my one-on-one conversations with people, but in between those, why not go deep with something with different subjects, maybe bands or genres of music or whatever. I think we have some cool ideas, and although this episode is essentially an episode that follows the same skeleton as most of the other ones I've done, we do take a few detours and go into some pretty nerdy territory. But I had a great time talking with these guys, and I'm pretty excited to hang with them again and do this. And I'm excited for you to hear this because I thought we had a good time. This intro is already pretty long, so let's get a couple more things out of the way. I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook. I update both of those pretty frequently, and that's a good place to contact me if you or someone wants to be on here. Or you can just say hello. Those channels are the best places to keep updated on what's happening with the podcast. Just search for Talk About the Passion Podcast, and you should be able to find it. You can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and all those other wonderful places you play your podcasts. And if you have a free second and wanted to rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, that would rule. I love to hear how I'm doing and what can be done to improve this. Anyway, let's get this started. This is episode 39, Chemistry, and thank you for listening. So I'm here with Brian Smith and Guy Wetherbee. If you guys want to introduce yourselves to
hi
everyone.
Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah.
So this is, you want to
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Brian.
Yeah, that's Brian. So by default, you can guess which one I am.
Yeah. So we're here. We've been actually talking for about 4 hours already, so we probably could have recorded a couple more episodes. But so we're here up in the Merrimack Valley area, and you guys both grew up in this area?
Yeah. We both got were little in Westford, which is one town west of here, right? No, east.
Yeah.
Just another tiny little town, just like this one, you know?
Yep. It's just a small suburb of Lowell, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
It's a
like
tiny
semi-rural
little-
suburb. Like your neighbor is likely to have like cows or something,
Right.
like that kind of area. So, and then I moved away. My father got remarried after my mom passed away, and I moved here to Tingsboro, and I've been here ever since. I lived here with my parents, then bought a house here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. This is Guy. I was with Brian probably from about the age of 3 or 4. So he's basically, I have a brother and sister, but he's my other brother.
Yeah.
And certainly the two of us grew up musically very much in line.
Yeah.
More so than my brother or sister. So that really stuck. And I was in Westford, which is where we both grew up, much longer than Brian. I was there till till 2000. So
wow, yeah, that's crazy.
yeah. So we grew up in small towns. And we stayed in pretty good touch all this entire time. So even now that I've moved up to New Hampshire, that's where I live now, we're still getting together, every
He
week.
lived right up the street, in fact, in the same town where, Brad Delp
Yeah. Yep, Brad
killed
Delp.
himself and everything.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Brad Delp was not a neighbor, but he lived close by.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like, I remember thinking, like, oh my God, man, guy lives in the neighborhood that Brad Delp lives in. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah,
Brad
if
Delp,
he'd been in a better headspace, I probably would have ended up hanging out. And
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
would,
and he used to play in like a Beatles cover band.
Yeah, that's right.
Beatles.
That's
right
exactly
around
right.
there
Beetlejuice
too.
or
Yeah,
something,
Yeah,
That-
somewhere
that's
in
it.
Atkinson
Yep.
Yeah.
at a
Yeah.
church or something. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Like,
So in that small little town, that's a town even smaller than the town that Brian and I grew up in. So in that town, you're bound to meet each other at the diner.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah,
and
just
strike out.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was
yeah,
awesome.
where I grew up, the bass player lived there, Fran
Oh.
Sheehan.
Where did you grow up? Christian?
Swampscott.
Swampscott.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so
cool.
there we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, what did you guys do when you were younger to like? How did you find music up here? Not that we're like way up.
right. Well, no, but back then too. It's funny. It's not that long ago, but
Yeah.
40 years ago,
Yeah.
we were way up here. This was
Yeah.
crazy. Like,
Yeah.
you had to travel
So yeah,
by car to go to even like to a Strawberries.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like
Right.
we had a mall next door or
Right.
anything at the time. But
well that's right, Brian. There was a Strawberries. That was probably ground zero.
Yeah.
That and Leechmere.
Oh yeah.
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, wow.
Before Leechmere, it was Caldor.
Caldor, yeah.
So
right
up
on.
in Chelmsford,
Yeah.
there was a Caldor Strawberries.
Yeah.
So you'd play those two against each other. You'd
Yeah.
go into Caldor and you'd be like, oh look, yes, the classic yes is $9.99
Right.
here. You go across the Strawberries, oh it's $7.99.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you go back out to the car and you go,
Yeah.
Dad, can I
I
borrow
only
$8?
have $3.99.
Yeah.
Dad, I need $8.
Right.
You know, you'd be like, why don't you
But-
mow the lawn? And then you'd go from there.
My
Yeah.
earliest thing with getting on music was from AM radio.
Yeah.
My father had a radio 24 hours a day going, just running in the kitchen on a local station out of Lowell called WLLH, which is still there, but now it's 100% Latin
okay.
station. And I had it on. I was down at Ron's yesterday, and I had it
Yeah.
on. Yeah, and just to see if it was still there, you know,
Right.
and it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that was when I first started to become interested in it as something where I would sit in front of the radio on purpose to
Yeah.
listen to it, like
That's
you would
right.
watch a TV show.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I got
Yeah.
my music thing from, I guess, where I started to get it as a kid.
And my mom was a musician,
Mm-hmm.
so we had a grand piano, baby grand piano, in the house
Yeah.
from the time I was born.
Oh wow.
She had guitars, dulcimers, auto harps, banjos.
Oh nice.
So she was a musician. So she would just sing and play. My dad loved to listen to her play and sing. And of course, as soon as I could, pick up a guitar, I mean, that's how I got interested in playing. But
Yeah.
before that, of course, she had a stereo.
Yeah.
And my parents were they were Columbia Record Club members.
Yeah.
So every week or every month, they
Stuff
got
would
mail,
show up, yeah.
right?
Amazing.
And I still have some of my dad's old tapes and some of my mom's old records. So he had, my dad had some strange taste.
Yeah.
As a music,
Yeah, but he turned us on to some really good stuff, man.
Johnny Cash,
Yeah.
right? But then Boots Randolph, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Like instrumental music. And then my mom was kind of, she was into folk music a lot. So she had like Judy Collins, Buffy St. Marie, again, some strange stuff like that.
Right.
And then every now and then in their record catalog there'd be the Kingston Trio, so
Right.
something really old.
Yeah.
So all that stuff sort of played in early, and then like Brian, as soon as I got, a one-speaker boombox for, Christmas or my birthday, it was all about the radio. This is pre-MTV.
Yeah.
So it's early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And then, much like Brian, we'd spend all day separately listening to radio, taping favorite songs, and then getting together and say, dude, listen to this, listen to this.
Yeah. And before that, it was crazy because he got a radio of his own, so to speak. Like, this sounds crazy in the day of smartphones, right? So
It
he
really
got this,
does.
this boombox, which was awesome because you could play and record tapes on it.
Yeah.
And way before me, so he was on to WCOZ, BCN, and all that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that. I was still only listening to AM radio.
Yeah.
So he would be like, "Oh, dude, you got to hear about this band called, Van Halen."
Right.
And I'd be like, "Van Halen," and he'd play me some tape of it.
Yeah.
And I would literally be like, "Dude, I was listening to this 1938 Benny Goodman band.
Right.
Gene Krupa breaks off this drum solo."
Right.
And so he was like ahead of the curve with more.
Rock and
I didn't even know yet.
Right.
But that, of course, I was like,
Yeah.
heard any of that stuff and went.
But even at that early age, it was already very eclectic. We were really interested in what each other was picking up, and we wanted to see, well, what do you got? Well, what do you got? And trade almost like a competition. You get together again after school and say, here's what I taped or what I listened to.
Do you guys remember one of the first ones that was really like that you both clicked on? Was like, dude.
The first really, really obvious one is Moving Pictures.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I told you the story earlier, but I'll tell it again anyway.
By Rush.
For those.
Moving Pictures by Rush.
The two people that might not know.
Had just come out, so it was 1980?
Yeah.
81.
Yeah. 81.
Yeah, and I didn't know what it was. I'd never heard of it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're like 10, 11 years old at this point.
Yeah, and I heard kids on the school bus talking about this band Rush, and because I was a music nerd, I was like, Rush and Moving Pictures, what is it? Like, I was fascinated with the idea of it. Like, what is Moving Pictures?
Yeah.
And this kid said, you don't know what Rush is? And I said, no, I don't know what Rush is. And he goes, it's a band, and they have a record, and it's called Moving Pictures, and it just came out. And I was like, okay, cool. And the other kid said, it's got Tom Sawyer on it.
Right.
And all I could think in my head was, the kid from Mississippi or whatever on the raft plays on this record. It's got Tom Sawyer on it.
Right.
I was like, is Tom Sawyer a name of a band member? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, there was a magazine drive at school to raise money for school. And I had $6 or whatever, and I bought a Moving Pictures cassette. And then like 6 weeks later, it came in. And it was a Columbia Music House one.
That's right.
So it had nothing but the art and the the track list. It didn't have any
liner notes at all.
Who was in the band. It had nothing. It was just blank.
Yeah.
And it sounds so cheesy to say it, but I put it on and it changed my life.
Yeah.
I became infatuated with it, obsessed with it. And I was kind of scared of it, which sounds funny now, but it had this weird, creepy aura to it that made it weird.
Yeah.
I played it for Guy, and he, strangely enough, just went as crazy about it as I did. He was like, this is...
Yeah.
And then that was it. That was the first big one that I really remember. There's been other ones since, but that one... Whew.
There was nothing on the radio like that that we could channel into.
Yeah.
Brian's listening to AM radio. He's hearing Benny Goodman.
Yeah.
I'm listening to FM radio. I'm hearing Duran Duran and Men at Work.
Yeah.
And I'm digging all of it.
Yeah.
And we're finding things that we like. But a band like Rush.
Oh yeah.
Like, now that we knew who they were, the spirit of radio showed up on the radio. And we're like, oh, there's other music by this band.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was sitting with my finger on the button, listening to the radio, and if I heard the first notes of a Rush tune, I would immediately...
You'd record it. You had somehow
So I had all
wanted to
these
capture
tapes
this.
of everything but the first 2 seconds of a whole ton of Rush songs.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'd be thinking about this, and again, in the day, you start to go to the convenience stores of the time, and you'd look at music magazines. There's no coverage of Rush.
Yeah, of course.
Every now and then you'd find a Circus magazine, and there'd be a little article about Rush, or we'd find something like that. We started to investigate. We wanted to know more. From day one, we always were like, well, this is an album.
Right.
What else is there? Is there anything else?
Yeah.
We're
also,
always like that with every band to this day in 2019. If Brian and I find a brand new band like somebody like Esperanza Spalding, who's this incredible artist, and we find out, oh, she's doing this music, and it's really interesting. What else has she done? Where did she come from? Where did she start?
dive into
what else?
it,
Right.
Also opened up immediately the doorway of if the dude from this band mentions that he likes this, I should go and listen to that.
Yeah, of course.
So that was the first one I think that.
I think too where we all sort of got around, because I got into Rush too around I was 12, 13 years old, and for whatever reason it did connect with me, and I think everyone that I know that got into them around that same age and around that same era of them, because that's when they were changing too. Because I was saying earlier I discovered them through Exit Stage Left, and just kind of knew that they were kind of hard rock stuff, and then the weird stuff, and then Signals came out, and I was like, in the lyrics to Subdivisions, and I was like, this is like
that's right.
Subdivisions,
hardcore and stuff at the time too, but I was like, this is.
Certainly,
Subdivisions was a monster. It still is. In fact, it refuses to be overplayed or destroyed in any way. It says, if I put it on again, it's so funny to do this because people are going to be. It's so hard to talk about this the way we always do, without realizing now how pretentious you sound, right? But I can't put I guarantee if I put Subdivisions on right now, the hair on all of our neck will stand up. It's visceral.
By the time we'd absorbed a little bit of moving pictures, Signals was on its way out, and we had started to whatever investigation we could put into finding out about this band.
It was the first record I ever waited for, like that I knew it was going to come out.
We knew it was coming out.
For it to come out.
So when it came out, it was kind of a big deal, you know. We were still not even teenagers yet, and we were waiting for this album, and it came out, and we loved it, and we taped it off the radio, and they played New World Man and Subdivisions, and we as soon as we could afford or ask our parents for the album or the tape, we got it. And from there on, that was it. That was cemented. And then, of course, MTV happened, and it changed the game. We started seeing videos. Now we could put, you know.
And all this kind of came together in with the fact that Guy's mother, being a musician, was also immediately tolerant to us having a band in his basement.
Oh, nice.
Right, because for some...
Immediately, like, my father was... We don't even want to get into that. My father and I did not have a great relationship, and... he was a really, really... Anybody that knew my dad would tell you he was one of the most difficult human beings you would ever meet in your life.
Right.
Guy's mother would think we could absolutely be dressed like Geddy Lee and carrying bases and stuff in and out of the house from the time we were 12.
Were you guys dressing like Geddy Lee?
No, but I mean, we would have, like, at one point we were doing a black metal band, and his mother was, like, in the kitchen, and we're, like, in there in corpse paint. And she's like... Oh, what are you guys doing? And we're like, oh, we're cutting a black metal demo. She's like, okay, hey, do me a favor. Take that bag of trash out, okay? Like, it didn't even faze her. Right. So that cannot be overestimated, how big of a deal it was to be able to start messing around with a band idea or something at a very, very young age.
Together and separately, Brian and I got into Rush, and which is an interesting idea because we got into it together, but then separately we were having our own relationship with it, and
we liked some of the other stuff that was the same too. Like we both like Kiss,
right?
Interestingly enough, although he's a gigantic fan now, it took me literally decades to convince him that he liked AC/DC. He wasn't on it right away, and I was like, "No, this is the best thing ever."
Well, that Rush phase took me into a progressive rock phase,
right? Which I followed
Genesis
him into,
and a lot of other stuff.
King Crimson,
but certainly cemented in, for whatever reason, both of us. Not only did we like Rush, and did we listen to that and go, "Oh wow, this is our band. This is something different," and it also wasn't super popular. So as outcasts in school, neither one of us were popular in school, so
there was nothing more punk than being a Rush fan at that time in school. You could get beat up on the daily.
You could get beat up. I wore a T-shirt once for like 3 weeks in a row. Never changed it. Never took a shower. Wore my Rush T-shirt.
And it was a badge of honor, like because everybody hated you.
Right? We're like, we're going to beat you up after school. I'm like, go ahead. I'm wearing it tomorrow. But it certainly inspired both of us to start wanting to play too.
I
mean, when I heard that, I said, you can wait a minute. I love Duran Duran and I love Men at Work, but I love Rush. You can play like that? It doesn't just have
that blew my mind.
Like, I have to know how to do that. And so for my 12th birthday, I said, I need a drum set. And my grandparents actually bought me a drum set, which I still play to this day. Nice. And we went up and we got it, and I set up and I said, I'm going to learn how to play like this guy. I mean, what a... Now, in retrospect, I'm like, it's ridiculous. You're going to learn. You're going to learn at the throne of Neil Peart and Rush, right?
And I got my mom
Very
was
shortly
still
later,
alive then.
yes.
My mom was still alive, and my mom was a art fan. She didn't really make any art or create anything, or she wasn't a musician, but she loved to read. She could draw really good, and she liked to listen to music and stuff. So she convinced my father that they should let me take band at school.
That's right.
But I couldn't. It was absolutely out of the question that I would be able to get a drum kit.
Right.
But I got the snare, which is that snare right there.
Oh, really?
That I got when I was 10. Yep.
Wow.
And I still play it as part of my drum kit.
That's right now.
Every
right.
day.
Yep.
And even though that's a cheap Ludwig 1979 school band snare, almost every single person that's ever heard it has said something about it.
Yeah.
To the point
It's
where
a magical drum to me.
Yeah.
And of course my connection to it is so deep that
of course,
it could sound like ass and I would think it was awesome.
And I took band a little bit later than Brian, but when in middle school I was in band too.
Yeah.
And my mother drove me to the music store and got me a snare, and it was a wooden snare. This Ludwig snare it's aluminum.
Right?
Yeah. And it was fine, but I've coveted Brian's original school snare so long that, you know, in my adult years, maybe, what was it, 10 years ago or so, I started looking these up.
Yeah.
And I've since bought two of these.
Oh, yeah?
One's a what they call a blackrolite because it's black.
Yeah, they just.
And then an
they just
acrolite,
changed
which
the
is just
finish.
this. And I bought two of those to chase this sound. Nothing sounds quite like his, of course, because they don't.
But that's how instruments are.
Right,
all
they're
sound
unique.
different,
But I've chased these down because it's just that good of a snare.
And I have like 4 of them.
Yeah, and if you go online and you look at professional drummers, a lot of them will rate this snare as one of the, like, look, this was a cheap school
There's
snare
another
in
one
the
right
70s.
there, sticking out behind that keyboard. I can see it from
Right,
here.
he's got his spare.
Yeah, you know, but. So anyway, we
that
were able to do that right away, which is crazy. Like
Rush certainly inspired us to want to play, and then our parents, amazingly enough, wonderfully enough, said, "Okay." I mean, drums.
Yeah.
That couldn't be a
That's a
louder instrument in a
commitment,
house. That's a
yeah.
commitment to a parent. I mean,
Of course.
yeah.
And you were saying too, your parents were doing Columbia Records, so you would get packages in the mail.
That's right.
And here you are. You just showed up here with a box of records that you.
right.
So
that tradition has.
So
stayed with
today
you,
on my way in to talk to Christian with Brian, I'm leaving my house and I look in my rearview mirror, and up against the wall is a package that I hadn't noticed, and I picked it up, and it's a package of records a guy sent me from a website where people buy and sell records. And I'm like, oh, look, it's a new package of records, and it was a surprise. He said, it's a gift. I really like what you sent me. You sold me something nice, and you sent me a lot of extras. Here's a little thank you. And he sent me a bunch of his dollar records or something like that. And I can't wait to get home and listen to him. I'm already Jones. I'm like, can we wrap this up so I can go home and listen to this?
So it's the same. Yeah, me too. I go to Newbury Comics still every Friday to see what the new releases are and check it out. And
I'm still not used to the Friday. I'm still missing.
It's weird, but
so this podcast, every episode comes out on a Tuesday. Just because of that.
That's new release day.
Yeah,
just how I've always
totally.
done it.
Yep.
Right.
And
Brian, did you ever work at a record store?
Not really, you know what I mean. Not as an actual employee, no. But I've
I
worked
should
the
know that,
counter
by the way. I've been friends with him since I was 4 years old.
whatever, but
Yeah, he was saying, so I worked at Slip Disc. And
Slip
Billerica
Disc,
for a
yes.
while,
Right.
with Ron.
yeah.
I know Ron very well. I never went. If I went in there, I was in the Chelmsford store, and then when he moved to Billerica.
Yeah, that's right.
I only went in the Billerica one a couple times, but
Yeah.
when Jonah worked at the Chelmsford one, I went in there all the time.
Yeah, I didn't know Jonah at that point, but
I used to get my all my straight edge out of there, like Gorilla Biscuits records and Jedge records out of from him. Yeah.
See, I hated that stuff back then.
Yeah.
See, Brian and I had many phases where our music did not.
That's always been one of the best things about our relationship is we're so on board with some things, and other things we
diametrically opposed.
Diametrically opposed, but that's been fun for many years of. Especially when somebody breaks down eventually and goes, I fucking love this now after I hated it for decades.
Right, like I can't. The day I came over, and who knows when it was or what year it was or what circumstance, I said, I've been listening to 74 Jailbreak EP by AC/DC. Is Bon Scott like one of the most amazing musicians? And he's like, really? It took you 20 years to realize? I'm like, this is awesome. And he's like, I was telling you for, you know.
And it's always, it's like a real, because my respect for him is so deep and like ingrained.
Yeah.
It becomes this like personal fucking challenge. Like, dude, you're too smart to not like this record, you know? And I'm sure he does it back to me too, where it's like,
Right.
You have to get this.
Yeah.
Why don't you?
Yeah.
And on the same tip, I might be going, I hate this record you're trying to force on me, but because you're trying to force it on me, I'm going to listen to it again.
Give it a little another extra nod.
He's had like a lot of influence on me with music outside of stuff that I would normally pick up, like electronica, things like that. That you know what I mean? I don't know from that stuff.
Right.
It's like the classical thing. He's the head that gets me into.
Yeah.
Oh, you like that? You'll like
Right.
this. So a lot of that stuff I've come on to from Guy, or even like techno stuff. You know.
So after Rush, where did you guys kind of go from there? Did you get into? So you were kind of into Van Halen and stuff. When did you discover like metal and that?
Metal, man. So Rush led me directly into. I stayed oddly enough on the big band thing, still even till now. Yeah. But Rush led me right into like the prog wormhole.
Yeah.
Like would be like Peter Gabriel era, Genesis, Yes, King Crimson.
Yeah.
Right around that time, for me, we diverged immediately. So we both
sure
were
did,
Rush
yeah.
heads.
Yeah.
I started hanging with this couple of guys at school that were into some it almost sounds like drugs.
I know,
they were
yeah.
into some heavy shit, right? And I was like,
Right, it's true.
what are you
though.
guys laying on me? And these guys were like bringing me to like the Residents,
Oh yeah.
and
I'm just starting to crack them, and actually
the legendary Pink Dots
something.
and all that stuff. The really fringe stuff that leads into like the noise thing and the really underground thing. They got me onto like Shriekback and stuff like that. So I was like going this way, and you were.
So for Brian and I at that time, there were a good like 3-4 years where we were in school together and digging on Rush together and starting to learn about this band again through magazines and whatever we could find, and then stretching out into, bands like things would happen that would change your life.
Yeah.
You'd get you'd go to Christmas and you'd be with your aunt and your uncle or your grandparents, and they would give you what did they call them back then? A gift, not a gift card, but a gift certificate.
Gift certificate is there.
Paper gift certificate that was handwritten,
right?
Ballpoint pen.
Booksmith.
Right, and it would be
Walden
for Jordan Marsh or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And my parents would immediately say, you have to spend this $50 on clothes for school. And you'd spend $49 and or $45 and you have $4 or $5 left. And one year, with Jordan Marsh, I had a few bucks left, and I went into it was still a department store, so they had records and tapes.
Yeah.
I went into their record bin and looked through Rush records. The only Rush record besides Moving Pictures and Signals that was in the bin was Fly By Night. So I picked that up. Band looked really strange on the back, long hair, strange looking guys. But I'm like, it's the same band, I'm going to pick that up.
Yeah.
And then all I had was $1 left, so they had a $1 tape bin at one section of the store. So I looked through and I picked out a tape that looked really cool. It was Drama by Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I like the album cover art.
Yeah. Was
That's
the
it.
one after 901?
No, it's
before
before
that.
that.
Oh, that
It's
was
the one
before-
with Trevor Horn.
Yeah, the first one. Yeah.
The only one where John Anderson doesn't do the lead vocals.
And it's awesome.
So
Well, not anymore.
So I picked that out, and I picked that, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then because I didn't know what they were, I went home and I put Fly By Night on, and I went, well, this isn't Moving Pictures and Signals.
Right.
By Tor and the Snow Dog.
Right.
Anthem. I'm like, this is insane music. What is going on?
it was so
And again, I
punk
couldn't
and
wait to get to Brian's
nasty.
the next day and say, you got to check this out.
Yeah.
And then this tape.
That
Here's
was
this
freaking me out too.
strange post-progressive future music, and again I became infatuated with that band too, ironically, with a lead singer who had nothing to do.
I know, right?
Yep. So it was things like that would happen, and it would change the path. And then as soon as Brian and I, we had all those years of music, and then he moved to Tingsboro and I was in Westford.
And then things got really separate. Yeah, because we weren't influencing each other as much.
Now musically we're a little more separate. He's going to a
Yeah.
different school. I'm going to a different school. I've adopted different friends. He's adopted different friends. His friends.
So then
were
when you
into-
get
right.
together every 6 months or something
Right.
instead of every single day,
That's right.
we would both have these massive lists of shit the other guy didn't hear yet.
A lot of
I
stuff was
got-
converging, but he went into metal.
My
where-
mom passed away, and then a year later, my dad remarried and moved to Tingsboro.
That's right.
And I had, no friends. I didn't know anybody. It was like I was the new dude. So it was 1984, was it? No, 85?
Yeah,
85
right around there.
Yeah. And I was out in the yard, like, being bummed out about, like, moving and everything, And I heard electric guitar, so I just literally wandered into the woods.
Yeah.
And I wandered like a mile through this field in this woods, and there's this dude my age just sitting on an amp playing a guitar in this driveway.
Yeah.
So I walked right up to him. I'm like, hey, what's up? And he's like, what's up? And I'm like, nothing. I just moved in way over there, whatever. And I heard you playing the guitar, and like we went into his house, and he fucking played Hella Waits.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah.
And it changed me again. Like I was like, never heard anything like that in my life. Like it blew me away. It was
much like me blind buying Fly By Night.
Yeah.
Just because I had a gift certificate.
Yeah. And from
he's
then,
like, I met this kid, and he's like, hey, come into my house and listen to this record.
Yeah, Kevin Lefebvre. He set me onto that, and he was also into like a lot of. He had some older brothers that had played too and stuff, and so his thing was deep already with like. I remember he was also crazy into Foghat, right, and the Almonds and Sabbath, right, all that stuff too. Yeah. And so that was like another wormhole that I went down, and then I was like still now like just metal always since then.
And so I was out of the loop with Brian, but I still was friends, of course.
Yeah.
We'd get back together occasionally, and he was a different person to me. He's like, oh, you got to check out this, Black Sabbath record. I'm like, who?
And for some reason, too, during all that, even though it's not metal, like that's when I became deeply, deeply obsessed with the Doors.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
For
I remember
many years, like I had this Doors fixation on.
Yeah.
To one point where I was writing out like this whole how it's like this call and response thing between Robbie Krieger and John Densmore, like almost like the drums are part of the lead. Like I became obsessed with the Doors. I'm not sure why that even came up with the metal years, but
it was one of those things. And again, we were having our separate journeys. So he was doing that, and I was my sister, my younger sister, Amy. She was into a lot of the early, what you call alternative. WFNX in Boston was a huge alternative radio station, but her friends and her crowd, that slightly younger crowd, they were getting into XTC, Suzanne Vega, the Smiths, The Cure, Squeeze, all of that stuff. And I was very resistant to that as a Rush fan, and as somebody who was just getting into Genesis. I mean, my first delve into Genesis was all the Phil Collins and up stuff. Right. I didn't want to do anything with
I was
with
getting
Peter
that
Gabriel.
stuff too, interestingly enough, even though I was like deeply into the metal thing.
Yeah.
Because the girl, one of the first girls I ever dated, I was a metalhead, and she was into that, the alternative thing. And that's where I first heard like some stuff that still is Joy Division.
That alternative music,
Yeah.
I was really digging that while Brian and I were kind of out of circulation with each other. Yeah. So we'd come back together and be like, I'm really into the Smiths, and he's like, I'm really into Exodus, and we'd bounce away again. And then we'd come back, I'm like, I'm really into XTC, and he's like, I'm really into the Doors, and we'd bounce away again. And then eventually we'd bounce back in and be like, hey, you still love the Police, right? Yeah, me too.
Right.
We should, and then the two of us inevitably, as we both started out as drummers. Yeah. And we both have branched out into every other instrument you could possibly imagine, but we certainly both started as drummers. So I picked up guitar and bass earlier than Brian did.
Way earlier.
So when he would say, this is what happens. You start
can't really
playing
have
instruments.
a band with two drummers.
That's right. Well, you can't. You can't.
And
remember?
his mom had a guitar.
Remember, we did have a
Heavy
band
Kit.
with two Heavy Kit.
Yeah,
right? We had a
that's
band with
true.
two drummers. It was 2 drum sets. It was just us playing
Just
drums called
facing
Heavy
each other,
Kit.
trying to.
We played no gigs and recorded no albums. It was a great time. But so I would just bring over bass or guitar. Sometimes I'd detune. I'd make this weird middle range tenor bass, and we'd try to we'd start bands with the two of us all the time. Yeah. And we'd invite
like 20
a third,
of them.
Right, we'd invite a third person or a fourth person, and it would never work.
Right.
And it would always just be the two of us. So the two of us have been playing music for an awfully long time too. And those kinds of connections of, even though we were out of each other's orbit, we came back together, it'd be like, what have you been digging? And Brian, I haven't really been digging Depeche Mode lately.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Really? Like drum machines and stuff? And you're a drummer? You're like, yeah, let me clue you in. Check this out.
Right.
And he would rip off something
And
on the drum set, and I'd be like,
really into
because I'm really checking out this. Or,
Joy Division. I was obsessed with Stephen Morris because it sounds like a machine,
right?
But it's a real drummer, you know. And I was blown away by the way he tuned the drums to sound like a machine because they couldn't afford a machine,
right?
You know? And
so now we're meeting together as musicians instead of just music fans, and we're like, listen, here's the stuff that I've been listening to that I want to play, and then I'd be like, well, here's the stuff I've been listening to that I want to play, and maybe that can mash together or not, you know.
Yeah, and he had like a lot of cool stuff too. He was like, I don't know where you got it from, maybe your mom. I don't know, but he was the first person that ever brought me anything that would fall in the category of like new age.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was like, it sounds funny now, but some of that stuff was awesome. Like we used to be so into like these huge albums that just 20, minutes aside of, you know, they're like noise records, Checkfield and all that stuff. Right. So
going back a little, do you remember? Oh, maybe not going back, but do you guys remember the first like live shows that you saw? And then furthermore, like the first one where you were like, "Wow, this is."
Yeah, my first real show of any kind, like legitimate real show, was Rush. For sure.
Same here.
Yeah, and it was exactly what you would expect somebody to say. Like I remember it even now in like a dreamlike way. It was like, I'm certain when I left that I still would like really couldn't even believe it. You know, I think the opener was. Yeah, man, I think the opener was Schenker. It was Michael Schenker.
Yeah. Yep.
I want to say.
That's right.
And it would have been probably Power Windows.
Yeah.
Right.
1985.
Yeah. And
Mr. Centrum.
Yeah. One of the things that really struck me about it, I remember riding home, was it sounds funny that they could really do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Those guys, it wasn't on a record. Like those guys just did that right there in front of me, man.
That was key.
And because I was such a nerd already, I knew I wasn't being tricked. I was like, they just did that for real.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first time it occurred to me that when you watch any kind of music on television, well, they're not really playing it.
Yeah.
I was like, you can really do that, and that was a big thing.
It was impressive. I remember that show very well, and you're right, Brian. It's like a dreamlike state. You'll think about it, and at 14, 15 years old, you're absorbing all this stuff. You know, you're in the biggest place you've ever been in with the most amount of people.
Yeah, just freaking out. Like,
so already that's emotional. Yeah. And then here's this band that you've made up a lot of stuff about as well as read about. But
I couldn't believe the scope of it either in person, what the size of an arena
that's a good
like
point.
That is.
The scope is
and the way that the band looked, like to actually be there insteot of it just being the cover of Kiss Alive.
That's right.
Where you're like, wow, this is what it's like to be here. Like it was like a moment. You know?
I mean, they were physically.
And I've had them at other shows too, but that one as a kid, it was literally like in a Disney movie where the kid sees the baseball glove in the window or something and decides that's his fate.
Right.
Know?
For me, there were two cogs in the wheel for live shows, and that was one.
Yeah.
Was the arena show at 14 or 15, very young, teenage years. Here we are in a room with thousands of people, and the band that we like, that we've created fictions for and know just a little bit about, because there's no internet. There's just they're here in the room with us, and now it's real. It's not a record. It's not the radio. It's not the magazine report. I'm here, and those three guys are here, and now we can relate. And then the next cog in the wheel for live music for me that happened was going to clubs. Was to take it from
that
the
was quite a bit
show.
later. Because when in 1984, I went to see Rush. I was 14.
That's right.
It was going to be years before I could go in a club. So even though at that point I started to get onto, because of like Rocket and stuff, I started to get onto local music, but I couldn't go to see it. Every show was
most 18 shows
18 plus.
Back
21
then, most
plus.
shows were 18 or 21 plus. It was 21 plus for a long time. There weren't a lot of all ages shows like there were eventually.
Matinees and stuff.
So we couldn't get in to see a lot of stuff for a while. So it was arena shows, but then that next live, cog, if you will, that clicked over was to go to club shows. And now to really be intimate
like
with,
a foot away from
with the
these
musicians.
guys.
And when that started happening too, it was like an addiction. I was going to a show constantly.
So at that point, Brian and
especially in Boston, not to be
right.
I'm sure that everybody in every big city says this everywhere, but we lived between Lowell and Boston. We were literally at will could see something amazing.
It was an epicenter every single night, and you're from this area too. So in Massachusetts, but specifically if you're near Boston, in from 1989 to I don't know, right now, even, but we could see we basically saw we were seeing shows every week, at least once or twice a week, here and in Nashua, New Hampshire, which started to branch out in Lowell, of course, and the floodgates were open then. Now both of us were now musicians. We considered ourselves musicians. We play an instrument. I play drums. Brian plays drums. I play bass. And now we're going to see bands, and we're seeing bands that are not only friends of ours and contemporaries, but any band that we can think of. Hey, 24/7 Spies from New York is playing. I'm going up to see them Tuesday night. It's $8. Right? Hey, Curve is coming over from the UK. Right? It's $7.
That Curve show was awesome. Engines of Aggression.
They're going to open up. Axis. We're going to go see them. Axis. Hey, Lamb is coming.
Cool
hey,
show.
Whoever, anybody and everybody who showed up, who was on our list, we said, "Oh, look, EBN is going to come.
Anybody.
They're going to come play and do some audio-visual spectacular downstairs in the Middle East for $6. Let's go."
Yeah, you were talking earlier about how you made like a spreadsheet with all the different live shows you had.
That's right.
I remember doing the same thing and being amazed that like during one week I'd see like Sam Black Church one night, and then 2 days later I saw The Cure, and then like Fish or something. That's right. And then I went to like WWF one night or something. Who was I dating that week or that month or something?
Well, that's interesting, Christian, because that's the thing. You look at those, if you make lists like that, and I do make lists, and Brian makes lists, and people who get obsessed with music make lists. That's what we do. You look at that and you go, I had no limits. It was Only Living Witness. It was Sam Black Church. It was Curve. It was Moloko. It was Combustible Edison.
Five Style.
It was Five Style. It was Lotion. It was Velocity Girl.
Smithereens.
It was the Smithereens.
Whoever played.
Right, awesome. And when Rush came to town, we went to see them too.
You got to the point where definitely going to way more club shows than
arena ones.
You couldn't go to that many arena shows, you know, like in a year or whatever. But you'd go to see.
Well, the affordability was there too, and also Brian was well established in Tingsboro, and I was well established in Westford, so we were still very close. They're close towns, and we could say to each other at the drop of a hat, "Hey, listen, the Smithereens are in town. Do you want to go down Tuesday night? Yeah, let's go. It's $8." And we could just run in 45 minutes
Boston,
and go hit it.
Not only we were lucky because Boston had not only a wide array of great music being made in the city at all the time by countless bands, more than you could ever want to see, you know, like, but also it was big enough city that some strange reason, and people liked it well enough that bigger acts would play here in tiny little places.
That's right. I mean, Marillion played, how many times did we see them at the Paradise?
I don't know, 4 or 5 times.
And there's people in the UK.
Back then, and then just recently, another time.
Right, and there's people in the UK where Marillion is from. And
that only saw them at Wembley, you know?
Right, you know, right. So
I saw Warren Zevon at the Paradise. It was incredible.
I saw Queensryche at the Paradise.
Awesome,
Anthrax.
And of course, you know, like everybody that has like that certain years, probably in Boston, had the certain clubs that I have no idea how many times I fell on the dirty floor at the Channel, or you know, saw Malaya Rage at the Channel.
We saw a very again, when you talk about those shows that change things for you, you know, things that are a game changer in time. We saw a show at the Channel. It was Suicidal Tendencies, right?
Oh my God, yeah, with Exodus and Pantera.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Pantera had Cowboys from Hell had like just come out. Brand new.
Yeah. You guys like them? They're like
not at all.
No.
No.
People hate Pantera.
You know what? I don't hate Pantera, and like my friend Kevin, the kid who played me the Slayer record, played the guitar like John Fogerty through the woods that I followed.
Right.
Likes Pantera, and he's been turning me on to like paying attention more to sort of what's going on with the individual players. And I hate to be the dick, but basically it turns out in the end of the analysis that what I don't like about Pantera is Phil Anselmo.
Yeah, exactly. He's the fourth best member of
but now I've actually come to appreciate even some of his other stuff with like Super Joint and
Down,
a little bit.
I like Down.
But I'm definitely
like
not a fan of Pantera. I don't know enough of it to be a fan. But at the time, I don't even think I knew who they were at the time.
And he comes out. He's had some knucklehead moments in the last few.
Oh, too many. Yeah, just idiot, right?
That particular show was a show for me.
That was really scary. That was the first show I was legitimately afraid at, for my life.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at.
Like I'm like, I remember at one point thinking to myself, legitimately, like, you could get killed here. Like this is.
But did you like? But you.
Yeah.
You wanted to go back, like.
Of course, yeah, and it was. It was like something really tribal about it. Like when you're in a room full of people that are all on the same page about the same thing at the same time, because it's so rare for that to happen.
It's been a running theme on this. I've noticed maybe the last 5 or 6 of these I've done where guys have talked about the first time when they, that danger that was in the air at this kind of show. But then they were like, but I wanted to go back, like.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it's always.
kind of disappeared from that world of.
Yeah, I was at, it's funny, is in the. Over decades of hundreds of shows, thousands maybe. Would it be thousands, you think?
Yeah. Probably. Hundreds for sure.
Whatever,
for sure.
You count on the number and have fingers left over, the number of times I was legitimately afraid at a show.
Right. Yeah.
That was one of them. That show was terrifying.
How many shows you were actually in danger at is probably a lot larger.
We left, this is pretty funny, we left a prong show once because we thought we were going to get hurt.
Was that the channel?
Middle East.
Was it the Middle East?
Yeah.
Downstairs. And it was one of those moments where
that was a Prove You Wrong tour, right?
Yeah. It was one of those moments where
that's a good record.
Oh, such a good record, yeah. And
it was a great show.
I remember,
and we were enjoying it. And it was really packed. And if you've ever been to the Middle East, downstairs when it's full.
Oh yeah,
it's insane, right?
It's kind of a channel. You get locked
and
in.
It was
like,
one of those.
You kind of got to. You're not going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You're going to just stay there all night, and you're going to fight through it. And you're going to establish your space, and you're going to stand there. Yeah. And it was really going good. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it was one of those nights where everybody was on 11 the whole time, and
that's right.
Every song that would come on, the crowd so loud, the singing from the audience so loud that you can't even hear the PA anymore.
You couldn't hear anything.
And at the end of the thing, they just started to play "Prove You Wrong," that riff, and it got so. I was like, "We're gonna get hurt. Somebody's gonna get hurt." And we had to leave the building.
It started to get very physical. Yeah. Which now at that point, this is a little past our prime for physical shows. We'd seen plenty of hardcore shows. Yeah. We were good friends with the bands in Only Living Witness and Sam Black Church, so we'd seen plenty of hardcore shows. We'd seen plenty of pits.
Often to be fair, often from the safety of behind a
correct,
off the side.
Right, and we because we knew the band members themselves, we always felt a little bit more privileged.
Friendly fire.
We're like, look, there's no way we're gonna get hurt because even if it starts to get, they're gonna recognize. If it gets a little crazy, they'll recognize. They'll come in and
that show was crazy, and I remember thinking how nuts it was.
But this show is past that. It's past that age a little bit. So
and I didn't really expect, to be honest, as much. I love that band.
We didn't expect the physicality.
I didn't expect that Boston to go off at a prong show like that.
No, it seemed pretty safe, but then at a certain point it turned, and we said, even at that point, we're a little old to get hurt tonight.
There was an element in the hardcore scene. I don't talk about that much on here that forced me to sort of stop going.
Yeah, me too. Of course, exactly, absolutely, 100%.
That's right.
Yeah,
and I talked about that. I think with my last one with one of the guys, that when we kind of talked about when that started happening in the hardcore scene.
Yeah, that was scary.
I mean, like Biohazard and that kind of
of course,
thughead kind of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, the tough guy stuff.
Yeah. It had a good thing with hard rock because I think it kind of created all those like stoner rock bands and like bands like ISIS. All those kind of
right. There was a splinter
heavy guys that were still kind of hardcore guys, but they didn't want anything to do with like. Just
it was this.
It was more a music thing, and
that's right.
Dude started growing beards.
Right, the music and the physical nature of the actual live show separated, and diverged,
so it became kind of a good thing.
Good thing.
We're all going to go over here. And,
right, two different camps.
And then bands like Seika started happening,
and it was
Stompbox
and
stuff like that.
It was weird to me too because I had liked quite a bit of the like the New York hardcore.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with the Gorilla Biscuits and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And what was funny about those shows is that music is really loud and it's really, really aggressive.
Yeah.
But the people, including the bands, are not scary.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly.
They're all nerds like me, just flailing around going, I'm really angry. And then in Boston, all of a sudden it was, oh, the guy that's trying to mosh me onto the floor isn't Civ, it's fucking Lou Ferrigno.
Right.
And he's going to crush my head like a grape, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I remember at a show, I don't remember who played or what the venue was. It might have been Bun Ratty's.
Yeah.
Or the Melody Lounge.
Yeah.
Where I remember being in line to go in with my ticket
Yeah.
and having them take a gun off a dude in front of me. And I just was like,
Yeah.
what is this coming to? This
Yeah.
isn't... I know I sound like the old man now, but
No,
it's like, whatever. That I came here to dance and drink beer and whatever, hang out with my friends, not to get shot or get beat up or get knocked out because I don't like
Right.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Yankees or whatever.
Interesting that you say, Brian, that
I lost interest in it.
they took a gun off a guy. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So from 1984 to 2019, that's how long I've been seeing musicians live.
Yeah.
The most frisked I ever got myself personally
Yeah.
was 1984. Was
Yeah.
the very first show, and since then I've been to some shows that I've seen confiscations that, like Brian said, would make any parent, petrified.
Yeah, brass knuckles and all
brass
that stuff.
knuckles, razor blades,
Right.
chains, all kinds of scary things. Everything.
Yeah.
But the very first Rush show that I ever attended
Oh, wow.
in Worcester Centrum, they made me take off my boots.
Really?
I had the high top.
They didn't want you to try to cut Getty.
High
or
top
anything.
Timberlands and stuff like that, And the only thing I was trying to sneak in that night was a banner that my brother and I had painted on a bed sheet of the logo for the Grace Under Pressure album.
Nice.
We'd painted that, and they wouldn't let us in with it. So we had to ditch it in a trash barrel right at the front, and we threw it there. And midway in the show, we went out to the trash barrel and went out and found it and fetched it and brought it and hung it over the banner anyway and made sure that
awesome.
the band saw it for 5
awesome.
seconds
Yeah,
until
yeah, yeah.
security came and said, "You got to put that away." And then we, threw it away.
Yeah,
I think I
Boston-
still have that banner in my basement somewhere.
Yeah, I
That's one.
remember it.
But yeah, certainly for being frisked for shows, which I was many times.
Yeah.
The most I've ever been searched was the very first show I ever went to.
Yeah.
And since then, again, I've been to many shows like Brian said, where people in
Boston
front of me
got
have
really scary.
have had guns and stuff like
Wasn't
that taken
worth
from
it
them,
anymore.
and they barely patted me. They said, "Off you go."
I don't remember what like the last hardcore show I went to was. I don't remember honestly,
Yeah.
but there was a point there where I had left shows too a few times because shit got to be in a
same
place
here.
where I didn't like
Yeah,
it. I
that's
remember
what I
leaving a Super Touch show one night, like
Yeah.
going, what are we doing? This is a Super
Yeah.
Touch show. Like this is what are you guys? That dude's gonna leave in an ambulance or something, some
Right.
fight, And
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, nah, this is whack. I'm out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just for guys like us that we're just like, I just want to see some fucking music tonight. Like,
Yeah, that's
and hang
totally
out
what it
and
was
see
always
my-
about
you
for
know.
me.
It was only ever about the music,
Yeah.
and so things like
hang
that
out with
started
my
to
friends.
get
It wasn't
politics distracting, which was
your
a nice way to
gang
put it, or
and-
irritating. You'd get really aggravated.
Yeah.
You're like, the show's going to end.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to call it.
Yeah, and there was like
It's gonna call a
there
night,
was
and
gang
you'd hope that it-
activity,
right,
right?
yeah.
And
We couldn't care
none
less
of that
about that.
was anything I was about.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
No,
Yeah,
we just wanted to hear the next song.
Yeah, I got that feeling like you were saying, like when you were in the building with Rush for the first time.
Right.
Yeah, I've had this same kind of moment throughout my life, and some of it may have been because I was high or whatever.
Sure.
But where you're in a show and just everything around you disappears, and you're just
Oh yeah,
focused
awesome.
on everything in the place disappears except the band.
Yep,
And you're
yep,
just there,
yeah,
and
Yeah, there's a
when
tunnel.
you can't do that, because you're constantly
Right.
like,
yeah.
There's a tunnel vision that happens, and then anything that's disrupting that is certainly an aggravation.
Yeah.
At the very least.
And I can say too, though, interestingly enough, as scary as it got, where it got scary enough that I wouldn't even go anymore.
yeah,
In my entire life, I only ever been hurt at a show one time.
yeah, yeah,
Ever.
yeah,
Same with me.
Same here,
That's
yeah.
right. Just once.
And that
Yeah.
says a lot to me because for certain, during the like what I guess you could call like the hardcore years, I was at some shows where
Oh yeah.
So
I was surprised I didn't get hurt.
So
But,
Brian, what show did you get hurt at?
I got hurt at the Middle East downstairs at an I Hate God and Anal Cunt show.
Right, that's right. I was at that show. I didn't get hurt. He did. I got hurt. You remember what show?
Stiff Little Fingers.
And Battalion of Saints.
Battalion of
That's
Saints.
right. What about you, Christian?
Bad Brains, Jerry's Kids.
We all remember. So we all remember which show it was.
Awesome.
But I know the guy. There used to be a guy. I think he was one of the Slapshot roadies named the Wrecking Machine.
Yeah.
He was a gigantic man, and he jumped on top of my head.
Oh my God!
I thought I was gonna die.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So once you get hurt at a show, that changes the whole entire dynamic of the show.
Yeah.
And
Right.
You're out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Thankfully,
It's funny that we all.
It was sort of near the end. It was the eye against eye era. So
Awesome.
good.
Yeah, cool.
Well, it's good that we all have only one. Yeah,
But I mean,
one
that's an
apiece.
amazing thing when you think of how many times I spent at a really aggressive show.
That's right.
And out
Hundreds
of
and
decades,
hundreds of
and I
shows.
only got
All of
hurt
us,
once. And what's funny is the time I got hurt, it was totally a freak accident.
Same with
it
me,
wasn't
yeah.
for years, I after after the 90s, I would always just stay away in the back. And I was like, I don't want to deal with getting up and then I was in Los Angeles in 2011 or 2009. I don't remember, but Nine Inch Nails had announced they were doing their last 3 shows. They were doing like a small club, a medium.
Yeah.
So my friend got tickets to the medium club one.
Oh, that must have been amazing.
It was the Hollywood Palladium, which was
that's an
not a
awesome
medium,
venue,
it's like
though.
and she's like, let's just go, we got to go right up front. So we went up, and I had no idea what they were going to play, and they came out and did, I was probably 10 feet away. They did the entire, they opened with the Downward Spiral,
Awesome.
the whole album.
Right.
And then Gary Newman came out.
Oh,
and
amazing! Yeah.
2 songs with him, and then but after that I was like, I'm going to start, because it wasn't as horrible to be that close. But for years I didn't want to be anywhere near.
That's right.
I love
being
that
close to them and seeing that record perform live. I was like,
must have been brilliant. I love that. Have you ever seen that video of Gary Newman doing Cars with Nine Inch Nails in London?
No,
the live
no.
one. Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, they did Cars and one other song.
Yeah, I saw Nine Inch Nails once at Lollapalooza.
Oh yeah.
They're still, pretty hate machine.
Yeah.
I saw them, I think, in the Centrum. They did on the Fragile tour.
Awesome.
yeah.
So I was working for Newbury Comics at the time, and we had some connections there, and we got great seats and nice passes, and so we were able to get right in and right out.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing show.
I switched back, not back, but I switched over to going to more bigger shows.
Yeah.
Well, because they weren't dangerous.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the side effects of kind of leaving behind sort of part of the club scene, if you will, for a while. Mm-hmm. I went to, let's go see Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went from a dry spell of seeing some of those bigger bands to seeing them.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting to see them again because I'm used to seeing the Smithereens at the Rat, and now instead I'm going to see Yes in this giant venue or whatever giant band that you had been ignoring while you were paying attention to.
Brian, even stuff like Joe Jackson at the Avalon, right? All of a sudden it's come full
yeah.
circle.
God,
the Avalon's a much bigger club than most
Yeah.
of the smaller bands that we've been listening to.
Yeah.
But and it's not an arena. But here's a guy that we've been listening to for 20 years, and now he's
I've always been amped on that when you think of a band that you get to see in a venue like that other people wish they could.
Yeah.
And remember that Joe Jackson, that time when you got obsessed with not obsessed, but you got excited about the road case? I remember being in there and at one point being really put out, being upset that this is it? This fucking room? That's Joe Jackson, motherfucker.
Yeah. No, I know.
What are we doing in this fucking bar right now?
It should be an arena. We should
I
be at the Centrum.
This dude is... Every single one of these dudes right here is a legitimate musical
Yeah.
genius.
This is a
What
legend.
are you doing?
And that was
which is so
what was
lame
that, Volume
of me,
4, right?
Yeah.
It was Volume 4, and just to be able to see that lineup of
Joe
those
Jackson,
guys play those songs,
the Joe
was
Jackson band. It's all the original band. They're all there.
mind-blowing.
They're all still in fighting trim. They can play.
Yeah.
Nobody's diminished in any way. And we've been fans for a long time. And we're sitting there in the room, and again, we're looking at every single piece. I'm looking at, like Brian says, his road case, and I'm like, that's his road case. He keeps his bases. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
And I'm excited about it. And again, there's a couple hundred people in the room, and you're thinking, this is a moment in time that's not special just to me, or not just special.
Like I feel like I want to.
This is kind of a memorial moment, and there's really only a few hundred people who care, you know. And you're like,
I feel like I literally want to go on the stage and just say, "Excuse me, hang on a second," and take the microphone and go, "That's fucking grand, maybe."
Right.
Yeah. Right there. Like, what do you...
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit louder in the microphone. I just want you to know, this is Joe Jackson. He's really important to me. Okay, he should be important to everybody else. Right, yeah. It's like that.
Yeah, so you get so passionate about it.
You get very passionate.
Right. On a selfish part, you're like, oh, it's cool. I'm in this intimate thing.
Absolutely.
But... You don't feel bad, but yeah, he should be playing a fucking arena.
Right. This should be well announced.
Yeah, it's just crazy, but you know, obviously, there's no. I don't think anyone will ever figure out that answer. What ends up in the arena and what ends up in the.
Yeah.
Because it sometimes makes no sense.
Yeah, like there was a tour a couple years back, or maybe even last year, at the Boston Garden or whatever it's called now, but it was Hall & Oates and Tears for Fears.
Amazing.
I like both of them. But
of course.
To me, I was like, they're playing a hockey arena now, but
right.
And I don't know how sold out it was. Or
right.
What,
I have a good story about that. So we were into in the '80s, you know, all the what you call alternative, you know, the Smiths and the Cure and Depeche Mode. Well, I had never seen any of those bands during high school at all. Never gone to see any of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it was way later, and I forget what year it was. Maybe 2000? No, 90s. Anyway, the Depeche Mode had an album out called Exciter.
Yeah.
It's a really good record. And they played at Great Woods. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm going to see Depeche Mode. So I went out and I saw them. They were tremendous. I couldn't believe how good they were. They had a live drummer, which I thought was just off the chart. They were amazing. But I got there, and I'm listening, and they did, like, Enjoy the Silence. And I turned around, and it's like people all the way to the fence, right? Yeah. And I was blown away. So I came home, and I called Dave Monaghan in New York, and I was like, oh, I went to see Depeche Mode, you know? And he goes, oh, how were they? And I'm like, oh, they were incredible. I go, but you know what's fucking crazy is they played at Great Woods. And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, it was like sold out all the way to the fence. And he goes, right. And I'm like, no, it was a Depeche Mode show.
Right.
And he's like, dude, what are you talking about? And I've just historically been a person that I don't watch a lot of TV or, read newspapers or anything. So he's like, bro, they didn't put out a record in over a decade that didn't have a top 10 hit on it.
Yeah.
And I was like just blown away that this band that I used to get beat up for liking in high school was this giant, I had no idea that it was that. To me, I was going to be Dave Gahan dancing around in front of the mic and, like a Joy Division show. I mean, it was crazy. Yeah.
I liked Men at Work back in 1981, 82.
Yeah.
And I thought they were a great band. And then they had a couple other albums and they were huge and they were on MTV and then they were gone.
Yeah.
And then Colin Hayes started putting out records, and I really didn't pay attention, but eventually I did. And I started going to see him live in, the late 90s, 2000. Yeah. And he was one of those performers that, his in-between banter was almost worth the price of admission alone. Yeah. He didn't even have to play half the songs.
Yeah, of course.
And he would throw a few Men at Work songs in there, of course, but his solo work started to become really interesting.
Yeah.
And not everything hit, but a lot of it did.
Yeah.
But one of the things that kept me interested in his orbit was that he just kept coming around. And New England loved him.
Yeah.
And so he kept coming here.
Yeah.
And so I kept going, and we kept having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Eventually, he would put Men at Work back together every now and then. Mm. And so, although I'd never seen them back in the day, I was a little bit too young to hit them.
Yeah.
Eventually, they got back together before Greg Ham, who was one of the founding members of Colin, before he passed away. They put together a couple of gigs here in Boston. Yeah. They played the Paradise, but they also played the Middle East downstairs, which, again, for me has always been a very small club and a club that I'm very comfortable in, and I've seen a million bands there. Yeah. And so to
kind
see...
of took the place of the channel.
Yeah. And so to see somebody like Colin Hay and Greg Ham, the original members of Men at Work,
that must have been awesome to see him in that
those songs
in a
little room like that. Was pretty profound because some of it was nostalgic, but some of it was pretty good. And Greg Ham was his typical self. He's walking on the bar and playing the saxophone, and he's coming all the way into the audience, and it was a really good time.
Yeah.
So, like Brian's saying, you have no no concept sometimes. You get so insulated
Right.
to the bands you love and what you like that you're like, look, I love Depeche Mode and I used to get beat up for wearing their t-shirts at school. I'm going to Great Woods, I'm seeing a show, and I turn
Rush
around
syndrome.
and there's thousands of people cheering along with the song. What did I miss?
Yeah.
You're like, I've just been very insulated.
Everything,
And here I
yeah.
am at Men at Work, you know, and had this little club, and it's a celebrated thing, and it's very special and very poignant to me.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's also, you know, like that's unusual. That's a very special thing. What's going on there, and it doesn't happen normally. And there's a ton of people who are really into that. And you say, boy, I've been insulated to this. I didn't know that people cared about it.
Also,
I'm there at a sold out show at the Middle East downstairs. I'm like, nobody cares about Men at Work anymore. Like, oh no, everybody does.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Also interesting that you mentioned Men at Work specifically. I always thought it was interesting that we have a habit of being really seriously interested in a band that people don't care about at all.
Right.
People are like,
people take very lightly. Yeah.
or people just think there's nothing more to it than it's like a one-hit wonder or something. But you're really deep on it. I'm sure you have some of those.
We talked online, I think, before about The Fix is one of those.
Oh,
bands
the
who
Fix
have-
is definitely one of those. Yeah, where another one that comes to mind immediately is Big Country, who everybody knows that
Right.
song, but it's
They
like
know
this
the
is a
song.
deep catalog
Yeah.
filled with amazing tunes that nobody cares about.
There
Nobody
aren't a lot of
knows.
people talking about Jerry Spicer, the drummer from Men at Work.
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
But I
yeah,
cared,
yeah.
But he was an incredible drummer. He went on to
Yeah,
become a
sure.
science teacher, but he was an incredible drummer, and he did 3 albums of amazing work.
One of the ones we talk about all the time, who's brilliant, and everyone thinks of as a one-hit wonder, is Thomas Dolby.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
loaded
Yeah.
with
Oh.
amazing
The guy I work
music.
with is a huge fan, and he's been telling me I should,
He's-
because I've never really.
yeah.
Thomas's work is epic. I mean,
He's just so there's so much more to it than what people think is there. You know.
Yeah. There's so many of those, and that might be one of the. I'll talk about it at the end of our thing, but that might be one that we. An idea to talk about.
Oh yeah,
when we
you're
do our
right.
thing
Absolutely, I agree.
Like
Yes.
these sort of not one-hit wonder, but bands that
Yeah, that
let's
people-
explore with deep cuts. With
Yeah,
how many-
there's like a lot of. Although what's interesting is I think as like a scene, there's a lot of that in like metal.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a thing in metal
Oh,
is
yeah.
to know everything about some band that nobody knows about, right? And
yeah.
I've got a million of them over there. Like,
Yeah.
trying to think of a good one. Like I think this is a good one. I just talked to a guy the other day that was amazed that Accept had more than one record because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
only one he ever heard was
Right.
Balls to the Wall.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, oh my god! Not only do they have a bunch of records, they've got a bunch of really good records.
yeah.
Thin Lizzy.
yeah.
People know the boys are back in town or whatever. It's like, no, this
Right.
catalog is chock full of
yeah.
amazing jams.
Yeah,
You know, Joe Jackson.
Yeah.
Actually in a Facebook group, a Joe Jackson group called Joe Jackson Has Other Songs Than Just Is She Really Going
really?
Out With Him? That's the
Really?
name of the group. Yeah.
I read the biography of the bass player from the Specials, Horace.
Awesome. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
talks
Specials,
about-
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So he talks about when they recorded with Elvis Costello.
Yeah.
Apparently, maybe it was in the same studio that Joe Jackson had recorded that first record in, and that some of the tapes were still there.
Oh wow.
And Elvis Costello and after them recording all day or whatever, and they were hanging around drinking or whatever, they put the tapes from that in
From the first one, from the Book Shark.
Yeah, and Elvis Costello sang
Oh my
recorded
god.
a version of "Is She Really Going Out with Him?" and then they just deleted it. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
what's funny about that song is like the hardcore heads like me, mostly nobody hates it, but you're over it. You're over it.
Yeah.
It really is an amazing song.
Oh,
maybe one of the best pop songs ever written.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute
Yeah.
classic.
What
Is
song
she
is
really?
that?
Is she really going out with him?
Oh, Joe Jackson. Yeah.
I don't want to. If I spend ticket money,
Yeah.
I don't really want to hear him do it.
Yeah, I want to hear "Kind of Cute" or Geraldine.
Yeah, or the
Dawn
band wore blue shirts or something,
Yeah,
But that was speaking of Joe Jackson, who's just another total game changer for me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Beat Crazy is
Beat
an underrated record. That's
yeah, every dream home a nightmare.
Yeah.
He's
One to
something
One.
else. Yeah, and
Evil
he's
Eye.
yeah, right. I mean, chock full of
Yeah.
amazing shit.
Yeah.
And still, his new one that just came out is brilliant. You
Yeah.
know, the thing about Joe is he's one of those guys. We touched on this earlier with somebody else. I think before Guy got here. Never had anybody in his band that was in any way subpar.
Right,
Every
right.
single
Oh,
person
yeah.
that's ever played in the band is on fire
Yeah,
the
Steely
whole
Dan,
time.
I think we were kind of
Right,
That's
Steely
true.
Dan
Yeah,
is the
both-
other another
one of
example of
those,
that
yeah.
where, sometimes like a band gets somebody and you're like, well, okay,
Right,
You know,
right.
Joe Jackson or Steely Dan or certain bands, you're like, where did you dig these people up? Like,
I've seen
what?
Today Is the Day.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely.
And Steve's a good friend. And,
oh, really? Awesome. Yeah. I've only met him. We played a show with him. Four Way Anal Touchfight played a show with Today Is the Day.
Yeah.
And I talked to him briefly outside of the venue in Lowell.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've always wondered about this, and maybe you know if you're a bigger fan. I love him, but I'm not a huge, deep fan. That night, the kid that was playing drums said, "This is my first gig."
Oh, really? What,
and Steve, he said, had chose him because he had a Today Is the Day tattoo.
Oh yeah, Jeff.
And he was shitting his pants. Yeah. And I've always wanted to find out what record specifically that kid played on, because he was phenomenally.
I think he plays on Kiss the Pit. He played on 2 records, I think.
I was
he
just
had Jeff Leppard tattooed on
yes, and I was like,
he was good.
We went in. Luckily, that was a weird thing. It was like a Halloween festival.
Okay.
And it was on 3 floors of a building simultaneously. And luckily, we weren't playing when they were playing.
Yeah.
So I went down and got a beer and went over and to watch them. And his drummer was just
he was
eating it alive. He was just wrecking the whole place. And I was like, you could not. Well, like, in some ways you could tell it was his first show. In some ways you were like, there's no way this is your first show. He's just. Yeah. I felt like even the band was like, what? You know, and he was awesome, and I want to find out.
Yeah, Jeff is. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That rules.
Maybe the one after that.
Because I love the first one. I think it's the first one. Is Supernova.
Yeah.
6 Dementia Seder.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting. You know, you talk about bands that have always had exemplary musicians join the band.
Yeah.
Or been involved, right? So somebody like Steely Dan, you may like them, you may not like them, but you can't deny the talent that was there from day one to the end, right? So, but the opposite works that way too. I don't know if either one of you guys are into Asia at all.
Yeah, of course.
The band that came up, right?
Well, up to a point.
So, right.
When the guy with the top hat comes and everything, I'm out. But before that, it's just the King Crimson guys.
So think about it. So the day one, it's what they would call a supergroup nowadays.
Oh, of course. Jesus Christ.
Steve Howe from Yes. You've got Carl Palmer, right, from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You've got John Wetton, who's been in King Crimson and everybody else, right?
Oh, amazing.
Right, and
that
you've got
Asia
Jeff Downs, who's from the Buggles, and from Yes, who's come from that, right? And then they take that band and they do a second album. They do Alpha, right? And now it's the dawn of MTV, so all those videos are there too. So they've got radio play, they've got videos. And they're
incidentally videos of them being played to people who only know them as Asia.
Right. So
they don't know
but there's this weird crossover too. They've got some progressive rock fans who are like, look, this is a little lighter fare, a little more simple, but I'm still interested because I like these guys. And then you've got people who have no attachment whatsoever and say, this is kind of heavy pop rock. This is interesting with some, strange.
It's almost like the first Asia record is almost kind of like Permanent Waves or Moving Pictures, in that it's individual songs that aren't 27 minutes long, but it's distinctly progressive.
It's from that, but it's taken a sea change into pop rock.
But it's still progressive, like in its own weird.
So do either one of you guys know the third album?
Omega? Or Hydra, the one with that kooky looking helmet, right?
Right. Yeah, so it's purple. It's Astra.
Astra.
Right.
Yeah, the girl's got the helmet on.
I'm really excited that neither one of you guys knew the name of that record, because I'm the only one who has it on vinyl. No.
Yeah, you are. So, I have the first one on CD.
And so this is what happens. Yeah. So Steve Howe leaves the band, and do you know who came in? This would be great if you did. It's not a test. I'm just saying.
No,
this
of course
is what
not.
happens.
No, I'm not 100%.
Like
it's not. It's somebody awesome though, right?
No. I mean, it's not somebody awesome to me.
No. Awesome is the wrong word. It's somebody. It's somebody that's well known.
It's somebody that's well known, but not in the circles you'd think of. So I'll lighten.
It's not like Holdsworth or something.
I'll lighten the mood. It's Mandy Meyer from Krokus.
Oh Christ! All right.
So that's right.
Nice.
So on paper you say, wait, what?
Right.
And
is he the one with the top hat?
No.
Who is that? Remember that part?
I do, but
they look like jellyfish and shit. Right. I'm like, what is going on?
So when Mandy Meyer comes in and Steve Howe from Yes leaves, what they do is that they say, well, if we're going to have Mandy Meyer in the band, then we're going to have no guitars at all. We'll just layer it with keyboards.
Okay.
So they don't even use Mandy Meyer.
Yeah.
Right, and so the whole thing crumbles and basically they were trying to make Emerson, Lake and Powell. That they were trying to make that album.
Yeah.
Except that worked for me. That
Touch
was a
and Go
cool
was a
record,
great song, right?
Yeah.
And they were trying to make that, but it didn't work because they didn't use the tools.
Right.
Yeah.
And once all of those, exemplary musicians, no offense to Mandy Meyer, but
No,
they
of
didn't
course
even use
not.
them.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And once they went off that, I was out. That was it. I was the last.
They
Asia
just went
album
down
I
a road
bought.
I wasn't into
That's
at all.
right.
But
For me, I bought the vinyl religiously. And
the first one I still think is amazing, and it's like a
It's
production
an amazing
masterpiece.
record,
sound
and
of
the
it
second one is
incredible.
pretty good too. And I bought the third one on
Who
vinyl,
produced
and
the
I
first
stopped. Oh boy,
Was it Hugh
that's
Padgham?
no, I don't think so. That's a good question. We could find out.
Yeah,
That-
easily enough. But
Yeah.
We'll edit that in and post.
oh no, maybe it's no, it's not. I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
It sounds great though. It's got that I call it like Alan Parsons project.
Yeah, that kind of.
Clean.
Yeah, but there was always that fine line between bands where amazing musicians like Steely Dan, but can they write a good song?
Right,
and that
sure.
and that was always sort of the divider for some people because most people aren't going to want to hear like the Islands album by King Crimson.
Right, yeah.
But if you play Dinosaur, like that later song, or like Red, even.
Yeah.
Like just like someone who's like into rock or whatever.
Might
Might dig that, but they're not going to want to. They don't care.
Yeah, it's the
They can
same with
play.
like I knew a guy who liked Yes, except if it got too long.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he was all about Starship Trooper, but anything longer than that, like he didn't want to hear Close to the Edge.
Yeah.
And for me, once I heard Yes, I mean, even that first tape, that Yes drama tape that I bought out of that dollar bin, Machine Messiah was 10 minutes. I said, songs can be 10 minutes long?
Yeah.
I couldn't wait for it to be
the
longer.
thing for me with that is like if you have to hold my attention for 20 minutes or whatever the length is.
Yeah.
Don't put out a
Right, it
20-minute
became a
song to
challenge.
be a prog band. If you can do it, but
Gates of Delirium is one of my favorites.
amazing,
from
yeah,
there.
of course. Gee,
But still, this many years later, I give it a spin maybe once a year as Topographic Oceans. I still.
no, it's
I
fantastic.
haven't been able to crack it. I haven't been able to.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
I remember sitting down with the first time I ever bought Hemispheres by Rush with Guy, and I remember one of the first things we were like, how will we ever memorize these lyrics? It's too long. How will we ever do it? And
We sat in your breakfast nook,
yeah.
and we listened to it. It was his dad had a record player that was up on a shelf like 6 feet high, right in the living room.
that was the one the radio was on
That's
all the
right.
time. Yeah.
And so we had to put the album on. We couldn't even see the labels, right? You had to put it on top, right?
Yeah.
And we put it on, and I don't know how his parents ever tolerated it, but we put it on full blast as loud as we could. And then we go down into the breakfast nook a couple steps down, and we just play, right? 18 minutes and 9 seconds, Hemispheres, side one.
Yeah.
And we
Which is
look,
nuts,
and
yeah.
the two of us would sit at the breakfast nook table, and we'd look at the lyrics, and we're never going to memorize this.
well, like Close
There's
to the Edge.
No way.
It's
Right.
21 minutes or whatever, 18 and a half minutes. Yeah,
So
it's
going back to Asia, can I hit you guys with this?
Yeah, who is the
We were
producer?
talking about producing. You want to hear some records here? All right, so here we go. Frontiers by Journey.
yeah, that makes
Right.
sense. Yeah. That's a cool record too, actually.
Yeah. Escape by Journey.
Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah. News of the World by Queen.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Really?
Day of the Races and Night at the Opera by Queen. Right. Yeah. All the Queen records. Queen 2, Queen, and Nursery Crime by Genesis.
Really?
All
I can
produced by the same guy, Mike Stone.
Really? That's crazy. I can see a copy of Nursery Crime from here.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I did not know. I did not know that.
That's
the guy,
my favorite, incidentally.
So
Yes.
so here's here's a news flash. The guy who produced Nursery Crime produced the first Asia album. I did
makes
not know
sense,
that,
yeah.
and I should know that as a hardcore Genesis fan.
That's my. You know what's funny is that's my favorite Genesis record.
Yeah.
I go back and forth between that and Trick of the Tail,
Trick of the Tail is
which is a
probably my
monster.
favorite.
Yeah.
I separate.
I didn't
I
know
have to
who
have
produced
two favorites. You know, the Phil years and the Pete.
Yeah.
Pete
If I was going to do that, I would just call it those two probably.
Right.
See, I'd go Lamb.
Everybody does though.
I have so many like I buy music all the time, but I also have a subscription to Spotify because I have tons of playlists and folders on there. But I have a playlist that's Genesis PG, Genesis
Oh, yeah,
PC,
yeah.
That's right.
Sabbath.
But I
Dio,
will say-
Sabbath.
Yeah.
Ozzy.
Dio Sabbath is better.
Yeah.
I think. I
Yeah.
mean, which I think is a minority thing for me.
Yeah,
Do you think it is?
Uh,
And when I say that, I want to make it extremely clear that I'm absolutely an
Yeah.
Ozzy fanatic. I love Ozzy.
I think
I'm
I
not-
listen to Dio stuff more now, and I
all of a sudden, you know what it was? Is Dio Sabbath is like proggier.
yeah.
I don't know. There's something different. It musically they changed as well,
Yeah.
And Dio to me is.
Yeah.
I will say, greatest living vocalist is now
Yeah.
Halford by virtue of Dio
yeah.
passing,
Yeah,
I think, and
yeah.
Dio was the best ever, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, they did four. I guess if you think about it, they did 4 records with him because they did Dehumanizer and then
Dehumanizer is underrated. I
Yeah.
think it's a good record.
Yeah, and then the Heaven and Hell.
Heaven
when
and
they
Hell.
when they called themselves Heaven and Hell.
The
record they
show
did.
from Radio City, the live one, is absolutely
Yeah.
off the chain. I can't
Yeah.
even believe how amazing Ronnie sounds.
Yeah, I saw them in Lowell on that tour.
Oh.
That's incredible.
I saw them in Lowell.
Yeah,
Right.
and that was one of those. Did I see Sabbath? I ended up seeing Sabbath years later with Ozzy.
Did you go to the
Ozfest.
last one? The
I
end?
didn't. No.
Me either. I was
Yeah.
bummed out about
Yeah.
Bill Ward, and I called it a day.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
nothing against what's his name there that played.
Yeah. Was
The guy from
Faith
Rob
No More
Zombie.
guy? Oh yeah, Rob.
Oh my God, I wish I can't remember
Yeah.
his name, but
But
he's a
Lowell
great
one-
drummer. But
Yeah.
if I'm gonna pay that much money to see Black Sabbath on the way out,
Yeah.
it better be
The Lowell
Bill
one was
Ward.
one of those where. Same
where at the
kind of thing.
Memorial Auditorium. Oh,
I think
Songus.
so, Songus, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was in my era where I was like, I'm gonna start and I'm gonna go up front. And I was like, just being that close to Geezer Butler, I was like, oh my fucking God. And then just Dio, his voice.
His voice is like a sledgehammer, and
like it's this fucking many
Right,
years later.
and he's 4'10",
Yeah,
and he comes
and he's
walking
just
out. You're
like,
like, "Where's
yeah,
this little
it's
guy?"
like I forget who it was. Somebody interviewed on like that metal show. Remember that with Eddie
that
Trunk?
guy- yeah.
Once
I have kind
said
of a
that-
love-hate thing with that guy.
Yeah, me too. Like
Yeah.
I'm into that he's promoting this music that I like and everything. But he's kind of a
Sometimes he's
tool,
good.
but so am I. You know? Seriously, but one of the guests on there, I think it was that wrestler. Who's that wrestler that had the metal
Oh
band?
yeah, Fozzy.
Yeah, Chris Jericho?
Yeah.
He said that, I think it was him. I don't want to misquote him. Jesus, he'll show up and put me in a figure 4 leg lock or some shit. But I think he said the thing about Dio that's amazing is he looks like Carla from Cheers, but he has the voice of a god.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm just blown away by him every time I hear him.
yeah.
Dio just destroys me. Those Rainbow records, or off the Elf record even. And that show, that one from Radio City, that Heaven and Hell show, is magical. I
Yeah.
can't even believe how awesome it
Yeah,
is.
my friend Arnie, who was in my band Presley with me, was at
Awesome.
They traveled to that, but
Really? Yeah, I'm
But
sure
when you
that was
yeah.
just insane.
When you think of that record coming out, though, like that Dio record, because
Oh yeah,
the first song is Neon Nights. It's
Neon-
just like,
I know.
It's,
It's-
immediately just like fuck you, just like right in your face.
I remember it was crazy how that was going to be a big deal too, replacing Ozzy.
Yeah,
that wasn't
yeah.
going to be a small deal,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I kind of because I didn't know.
me either. No, at the time,
when that
by
stuff,
the time it,
I was into
By the-
Ozzy, and then like I didn't really
and
know.
it's just crazy now looking back at it. If
Yeah.
you put that record on right now, put on Heaven and Hell, it'd just
Yeah.
blow you out of the room.
yeah, you
Like,
think about people that have been listening to Sabbath up to there. And
what do you
they-
think is better, Heaven and Hell or Mob Rules?
I know it's a tough one. Yeah.
I have to ask because,
That's
like we were saying before, there's only 6 people on the
That's
planet that
right.
get it. I
That's
have to
right.
find out
Yeah.
while you're here,
You've
right?
got to ask, even if you don't have a good answer.
You know what my
Yeah.
answer is?
Yeah.
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly.
But
you can
I
tap.
think it's like
you can tap out
choosing
that
from your
way.
2 children.
That's right.
Like, which one is your favorite?
what about Ozzy Sabbath? For me, the one has always been
Diary is mine.
Really?
Oh, Ozzy Sabbath.
Ozzy level-
Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
me too. He's not a huge Sabbath guy.
I like them, but much like the first Kiss album, the first Black Sabbath album, I'm like that.
Yeah, well, and that's hard to argue with.
I want to when I want to listen to it, I listen to
And,
that,
and
and
as
then I'm out.
Fenris said, and the spooky album cover to boot.
Yeah.
That album cover is brilliant.
And I have another touchstone with that record is that in one of my many flea market and garage sale tours of being interested in music, there was a guy who had a big box full of cassettes, and at the time cassettes were kind of on their way out, but he had a lot of interesting stuff. There was some jazz stuff, some fusion stuff, which I was really into.
Yeah.
When I got
With the
into
fusion.
jazz, I got into fusion first because to me it was a natural extension from prog. It's just like we're going to take
Kind of scary, like classical though.
Yeah.
I was into it too, but I was into like the fringes of it, like what you'd expect me to be into.
Yeah.
For me, fusion was like we're going to take prog and we're going to take the vocalists out and we're going to put soloists in.
Yeah, totally. But
So it made
that Birds of Fire record, that Mahavishnu Orchestra record is off the chain. I
John
can't even believe how
Lapani,
good it is.
Kazumi Watanabe, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even Pat Metheny Metheny and the ECM.
I've got a bunch of
Doll stuff.
I got a bunch of Billy Cobham band stuff, solo band stuff.
Right.
It's insane.
So that all was a natural, extension of prog for me. So I was looking at stuff like that. So this guy had this big box of cassettes, and I said, I don't know. I saw 10 things in there that I liked, so I'm thinking $10. And he said, give me $3 for the whole thing. You can take the box. Because I had started picking stuff out. So I took the whole box, and one of the things that was in that box was Black Sabbath, the first album, but on an Ampex cassette.
Oh, okay.
Huh. And the Ampex cassettes back in the day had this weird clamshell style.
You're right.
So it was more like a reel-to-reel.
Yeah, like those ones you get from other countries and stuff.
It was literally a piece of paper that was glued to a clamshell case, and if you folded it over, you would bend the right. So I ended up with that tape.
Awesome.
That
Do you still have it?
I do.
Yeah.
I ended up with that tape, and I also
that record is monstrous.
In that mix, I got another one of those weird cassettes that had a not more like a clamshell, but
slip case.
Yeah, that slip case.
Weird. The friction fit
with a pink tape inside that had no plastic. It just had empty air. Through where you could see the reels, and it was the first Led Zeppelin record.
Oh, jeez.
So that and so those two. So here's the thing with music, right? The physical copy sometimes makes you attached to it too.
Course,
So you get this weird copy of Black Sabbath, a weird copy of Led Zeppelin 1, and those albums become special because of that weird physical copy.
I remember when Henry Rollins was, I forget where we saw him. Me and Cricket, I think, went to see him. And he was doing a bit on, at the time was when El Nino, that storm. Yeah. And he did a bit about how he was ripped. He was mad that it was called El Nino. He's like, that's Spanish for the child. He goes, I can't be, but the child is going to destroy Southern California. He goes, why don't they change the name of the storm to the first 4 Black Sabbath records? He goes, how awesome would that be on the news? The first 4 Black Sabbath records just took California off of the coast of the United States. I was like, Henry Rollins strikes again. Awesome. Right. Those records are amazing. A lot of people I know love the one. A lot of people go right for is Volume 4.
Yeah. I still struggle with the last 2 Aussie ones. I still
man, Never Say Die is so good.
Never
Swinging the
Die,
Chain with Bill Ward doing the vocal is awesome.
Technical Ecstasy,
I have a hard time with it too, but I still own 5 different copies of it. Yeah. Like I've got 3 vinyl copies and a reissue, and it's in the box set.
So that's an interesting question. You just brought that up for me, Brian. What's an album that you struggle with, but you have 19 copies of? I mean, you just mentioned one.
Oh yeah. The most obvious one for sure is November Coming Fire by Sam Hain, which I hated with a passion, although throughout the skateboarding years I wore a Sam Hain t-shirt. That's one of the best album covers of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. Graphic arts.
Better,
well, what was funny about it was I legitimately hated the record. It wasn't that I just didn't get it. I was angry about it when I would hear it. And I used to legitimately buy it on a tape, put it in the tape player in my car, and then get to work and throw it away.
That's right.
And over the course of decades, I did this. I'm not lying. I did it at least 15 or 20 times. Bought the record and threw it away. I was so angry. And then a friend of mine, Dave Monaghan, found a copy of the Sam Hain box set that I can see from here. In a dumpster in New York outside of the building he lived
another
in.
Guy, there was another version of you.
Right. So and he sent it to me in the mail, and he goes, do yourself a favor, stop buying that record.
That's right.
He goes, listen to it, and then if you hate it, just put it back in the box and put it away for a year.
Yeah. Right. Don't throw it away.
And I want to say it was Dave. I wish he was here. If he was here, he'd be able to tell me exactly when it was. Yeah. Like 3-4 years ago. All of a sudden one night I decided to put it on and I got it.
Yeah.
Right. What about
and I was like, oh yeah, you gotta have.
Is there a record you struggle with? You got 5 copies of it. You tried it for 15 years and you still keep trying it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I'll have to come back to that.
Well,
I'll think about that. Yeah.
So for
How
me,
about for you?
So for me, the one that I'm sure there's plenty of them, but the one that comes to mind is Uriah Heep.
Oh yeah.
Which one? The whole band in general.
Yeah.
Absolutely, the band in general, and but specifically, I'd probably say The Magician's Birthday, which is one of their seminal '70s albums. I got into them because Roger Dean, who did all the artwork for all the early Yes albums, had done artwork for a couple of their records, and so again, pre-internet, pre-magazine.
Yeah.
You're looking through record bins. All you're going to do is recognize artwork. And both Brian and I were artists from as long as we can remember.
And Roger Dean fanatics.
So I could recognize his work. So I saw this Uriah Heep record, and it was in a $1 bin, and I said, I'll try it. And it was, and they had 10-minute long songs, and they had 5 guys in the band, and big pictures of keyboard stacks, and I could see all the tenets of progressive rock, of Genesis, of Yes, of Rush. I'm like, well, this band's going to fit right in there. And then I would listen to it, and I'd say, this really isn't very good.
Right.
It's almost more
we both
like
struggle with
this
it too.
bluesy.
He'd buy it, and then he'd make me listen to it.
They're one of those ones I've tried.
They'd be this bluesy southern rock, but by way of the UK.
They turned out for me to be a band that has a massive catalog with a couple of records worth of stuff that I really like.
Yep.
So over the years, I'd say, okay, well, maybe that record wasn't the one. So they had one that was before Magician's Birthday. And I tried Demons and Wizards, and I said, okay.
Everybody did, because they thought it was a Yes record.
Yeah, I said, it looks like a Yes record. It's got a great Roger Dean album cover, and it was the same thing. And I said, okay, but, and Brian can attest to this, I have, 15, 20 Uriah Heep albums.
What is that? That's another bizarre part of the syndrome.
I've got picture discs. I've got 12-inch records.
That's another bizarre...
I've got remasters. Yeah. I've got the expanded edition.
That's another bizarre part of this syndrome, is not only do you have to keep trying the record for decades, but every time you decide to try it, you have to buy it again.
Right. Yeah. So 30 years...
Why is that?
30 years into it, I'm still buying the remastered 2-disc edition of
Dude, I almost
Demons
bought
and
it
Wizards
at Newbury's.
Magician's Birthday. I'm like, maybe this time, right? It's this fatal optimism. Maybe this time it's going to sink in, and I'm going to get it, and I'm going to go, you know what, Sweet Lorraine really makes a difference to me.
Some of mine are
today.
real
but they've been
rock.
with me for so long that now it's almost a thing, you know?
Some of them are Cardinal Rock sins for me. Like, it took me forever. I'm really embarrassed. It took me forever to get the Ramones.
Yeah. I did that with the Stooges.
Okay.
5 years ago.
You know why I didn't like the Ramones? Because they weren't the Stooges.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't dirt. It wasn't... it was dirty and filthy and everything that's great about rock and roll, but it wasn't. I wasn't scared of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did it for me, bizarrely enough, what did the Ramones for me was not the Ramones. It was the Sonics.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Kevin Stevenson from Witness and the Shods.
Yeah.
I went over his house one day. We used to go over there and just drink coffee, smoke weed, and listen to records all day.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You got to hear this record." And he played me the Sonics record, and I went apeshit over it. And all of a sudden, I was in here listening to the Sonics record, and I was like, "Oh my God, I love the Ramones too."
There you go. So it finally clicked over. Right?
Yeah, but sometimes they never do. There's some I'm fighting with right now.
See,
but here's the weird thing: why the amount? Look at how much music I have in this room.
Yeah.
Much less what's available.
Yeah.
If I'm a fight with this record for decades, why not let it go?
Right, yeah.
It's almost like inside of me, there's something like, no, you got to get it. And you know what? Sometimes it pays off. Like
it does.
That's how I got into Elvin Jones.
Okay.
Was because who's now, godlike to me, one of the greatest drummers of all time, without question.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I didn't get it, but there was something about it that I wanted to get it.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel like sometimes with music, it's almost like putting in work. Is to get it is like, and sometimes you never do. But sometimes you feel like, I don't know what this is, and I hate it right now, but I know that it's in there, you know?
There's certain ones, too, that I never, just kind of were off my radar completely. And one I discovered, even just in the last year, was the Saints. I heard them, the first 3 records, and I was like, how did I not know about this fucking band is amazing?
You know who I just found out last year was Crowbar.
Right.
And people are like, how did you miss Crowbar? And I'm like,
think,
I don't know. I just found out.
Right. And I think when you're open to the fact that moment can happen anytime, then it becomes much more exciting.
It keeps me going seriously with new stuff.
Right. Yeah.
When I buy a record that just came out last week by some kid that's half my age, right?
Yeah.
And I want to throw my wife out the window and light my house on fire because I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And that's part of what it sounds like cheesy, but in music, it's like that is always legitimately right around the corner.
Yeah.
It's there. There's no question that it's there. It's
right.
just I gotta find that.
There's
thing, you know?
There's a technical maxim that says you got to put in 10,000 hours before you finally arrive at something.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah,
for
it's
me,
like in comic books, it's
Right.
you got 10,000 bad pages in you,
That's
then you
right.
start to draw passable.
then you finally
ones.
start to
Yeah.
draw.
Yeah.
So for me, when I was learning how to come out of, when I was recording as a musician, to get out of cassette recording and go into GarageBand, I put in 5 years of GarageBand before I finally really felt like I was ready to start recording that way.
Yeah, and I'm still like
it's really
even
worked.
way
Right.
primitive more than that. My shit is like, I took that laptop literally out of a recycling dumpster, and like I'm in like tape culture land still, but barely.
He,
you know?
he is, because that's only got 1 gigabyte of RAM.
Yeah, it's
if
terrible.
you know what
but
that means, you know.
guys
what it
way ahead of me on that curve. Like
well,
the
but I'm saying that it's like that with bands too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like I'm still trying to put in my 10,000 hours with Uriah Heep.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
And
dude.
I'm like,
you know
one
what?
of
Maybe.
these days it's either
but here's
gonna
the
work
thing.
or
But
it's
here's the
not.
thing, right? I always do this. It's a skateboarding analogy.
Yeah.
So I was hardcore skateboarding until I couldn't anymore. I got hurt bad enough that I couldn't. And there's a thing in skateboarding about not letting a spot beat you. You get hurt really bad at this spot, at this curb.
Right.
You have to go back and do it eventually. And music somehow is like that, where this record beat me today, but I'm going back to it.
Yeah.
But I have to respect the record to a degree of there's something in here that's evading me, and I'm going to come back to it, as opposed to now this one's gone over it.
And then discovering these like the Saints or stuff, and then being able to like, oh, I have this whole new. It's almost like when we were kids.
Oh,
we
yeah.
discovered Rush, and then going backwards and
Worst.
seeing all that other stuff.
The worst is when you discover one that has a great back catalog,
Yeah.
because it starts to put a hurt on your bank card.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, oh, I got to buy these 4, right? 9.
Oh, yeah.
I just
Yeah.
did it recently with a jazz with Ornette Coleman.
Oh yeah.
Never knew, didn't. People are like, you're into like all this really far out jazz and weird Eric Dolphy and like, free stuff.
Right. What about
How do you
Ornette,
not
right?
know about Ornette? And I'm like, I know who he is. I just never, like, he's
Yeah.
got a plastic saxophone. You need to know. And I'm like, no. And then when you open that door and go, oh my God,
Dolphy's great.
Out to Lunch is, I just played it for him. He never heard it before. I played it like a month ago, and he's like, how do I not know this?
Yeah.
Hat and Beard, right? What?
Right.
Out to Lunch, what?
Yeah.
Even now, I go, what is going on?
I
right
mean,
now?
I've
have to
known about
stop
the
it.
album for decades, but I was too
one that
involved in
came
other
late
things.
to me like
right,
that,
yeah.
which is, I love it when something really, really, really old comes to you that way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like it was maybe 5-6 years ago. I had a thing. All of a sudden, I had this bizarre epiphany with the airplane. Out of why though?
Yeah.
The airplane,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, well, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
And our friend Mike Wheeler has been trying. That's the other thing is you try this stuff on your friends. You're like, how about today?
That's for sure.
Yeah. They're like,
He's
no.
been trying with me with Bob Dylan and the Beach Boys for
Yeah.
a really long time, and it's just not
He's a huge advocate of both.
working. And then at one point, I did latch onto a Beach Boys record. I had a thing with it for a while with Pet Sounds,
Oh, yeah.
and he was really angry because I got the Beach Boys, but shouldn't have been Pet Sounds. It should have been whatever.
Surf's Up.
Right.
I don't know what it was, but he
Yeah.
was like, "No, everybody likes that when you idiot." And I was like,
Right.
"No."
Or the unreleased
Are you a
Smile
Beach
sessions.
Boys,
I've never heard a Beach
Yeah.
Boys album or a Dylan album.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. And again, I'm good friends with
Yeah.
Mike Wheeler as Brian is, and so
Yeah. Now,
he's been
Dylan-
trying with me. Now there are some small inroads that have happened,
Yeah.
and certainly Mike is a persistent friend and a persistent fan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's able to
And it should be pointed out that he I don't know how to put this without sounding like a douchebag. He gets it.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
not just
So-
like he's a fan. You know what I mean? You know, if this guy gets it, there's a deeper thing going on.
So
that
from
he,
his perspective, he'll say,
So you
well,
wanna pay
listen,
attention.
Here's
Yeah,
a
you
here's a
wanna respect
solo album by this particular guy from the Beach Boys
Right.
that came out in the late 70s, early 80s. Maybe this will be your way in.
Right.
Check this out. And I'll
Yeah.
go, there's 8 songs off of this that are awesome. He's like,
Yeah.
what
well,
did I
he's
say?
the back to where we were. He's the head.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You
So
know, that you
he
gotta
can
go
lead
in
me,
for.
and he's like, look, you're gonna chafe at Little Deuce Coupe.
Yeah.
I understand
The
that.
Beatles too.
Don't
He's a
wor-
Beatles nut,
Right.
and
So
I'm like,
he's like, don't worry about
Yeah.
that. I'll find a way. He made me a Beatles mix probably 10 years ago now, and I'd never. Do either one of you guys know the song Glass Onion?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I do.
I'd never heard the song. Didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Didn't know any Beatles.
Of course, I
album at
say
all.
like a pretentious
Right,
asshole.
and
yeah, of course. yeah.
and he put that song
amazing.
along with a lot of others that I like on a mix, and he said this mix is going to be what I think you'd like based on what I know about your taste. and that song immediately showed up on my radar and went, whoa, what a great song.
Yeah, of course.
Doesn't matter who did it. I don't care if the Beatles did it or if Rush did it. It was a great song.
Yeah.
That's a testament to the kind of, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I like the Beatles or not, or the Beach Boys or not. You're so interested in music. You're like, I want my friends and anybody that I know
to get it.
I want you to hear the best things.
Yeah, the people you
so
respect.
It's weird.
Glass
it's like,
Onion may be one of those songs that's one of those best songs. And even if you don't like anything else by the Beatles, at least you'll have one of their best songs under your belt. And so I appreciate his.
Sometimes it's like
his tenacity for that.
The other thing, you're right.
I mean, you and I, Brian, you and I
we've
have
been
had
forcing
such
shit
tenacity
down each other's neck.
Right,
Like
we've gone overboard.
We've literally.
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but
no, it's
literally
literal.
been down here drunk. Like drinking 2 bottles of whiskey. We've been down here 8-9 hours doing this. As you can see, this could go on forever.
We've had
and
actual
literally
fights.
almost come to blows over like a Joy Division
Like
record
physical
where he's
fights.
like, "This is primitive. What are you in? Are you a caveman?" And I'm like, "Get out of my house,
This
bitch!"
is for children.
It's.
Yeah.
I don't know. What is that? Yeah, well, it's the whole purpose of your thing. It's the passion. It's in you. It's like, no, dude, I can't. No man's left behind, and you're gonna like this fucking record, bro.
And for decades, Joy Division and by extension New Order did nothing for me. And then those Peel sessions,
which are almost
Joy
always
Division Peel sessions,
the New Order Peel sessions.
New Order Peel sessions,
where
blew
they
my
just
mind.
decided that we got to go in and play this live for John Peel. So instead of playing New Order songs, we'll just play New Order versions of reggae songs.
It was fantastic. And
it's
I was
so
like, that's
cold
my
and
that's my
clammy,
gateway.
and Barney is so
finally got
uncomfortable.
it.
And
I finally got it. It pulled a lot of things that I was into in, and I said, "Oh, this is great. I get the band now. I understand exactly what was going on."
it's weird.
And it brought me to Joy Division too. I'm like, oh, now I can appreciate a lot of that. Where I chafed against it for years, decades. Decades. I was resistant to it because I just thought it was music performed by non-musicians, and
which in some cases is what makes it awesome.
Right. But I discounted it summarily because of that, and that was wrong. But I didn't know that then. For decades I said, well, it's
the
got to be.
Epiphany is amazing.
It's
when
amazing.
You get
It is a great moment to have it happen.
And again,
that's what it was
it's
about.
like
It's fantastic. It feels great.
I equate it very much to, like I said, to like landing a skateboard trick that put you in the hospital 3 times, or or for a more mainstream thing, it's about getting that touchdown or that working really hard at something and then getting. And the thing about music is that when that epiphany comes, it's because you get it, and it's because it's like I feel like I learned something,
and it's
or I grew. It's
wholly positive too. I mean, I didn't say, look, I spent the last 20 years chafing against Joy Division, and now I feel rotten because I get it now, and what a jerk I am. I'm like, well, I'm so glad I get it today.
That's important.
Thank you for persisting in pushing this.
It's important that you said that. Another one that I battled him for. I mean, we've actually had. Legitimate physical confrontations during Four Way Anal Touchfight shows where we've been fighting backstage about a record, and then on stage he like throws me through a drum kit or whatever.
The fight continues on stage.
Specifically, I remember having physical confrontations over Neil Young.
That's right.
Where he wasn't having it. And I'm like, you don't understand why this is one of the best things ever.
It got physical.
And you're gonna listen to Down by the River 14 times right now.
Right, this horrible music.
Neil Young, are you in? Yeah. Joe Walsh.
Yeah, of course.
Was another one where I'm like, Joe Walsh, he's like, no, look at this guy. And I'm like, no, you've got to hear this solo. Listen to this James Gang bootleg,
That's right.
Go on. So, speaking of that, so we were talking before this, and I was going to kind of get into this at the end about what we're going to do, hopefully, in the future of this podcast with you guys. But let's go back to, you guys have a four-way
anal touch fight.
So let's talk about that. How that
awesome. Yeah, I'd love to. That's amazing. Also, I should point out it's crazy. It should have been at the beginning.
Right.
Maybe of this, but thank you so much for having us on, dude.
Well,
this is the best thing ever right now.
Well, I was thinking we could.
Because I have more batteries for this thing. It's going to go on all night. Four Way Anal Touch Fight. Yeah, it was. I don't know. You should talk about it. It's your thing, really. It's Guy's band, kind of.
Well,
he's the Fogarty of Four Way Anal Touch Fight.
I mean, it's our
band.
It doesn't happen without both of us.
Yeah.
The initial impetus came as a lost in translation joke.
Mm-hmm. We had a band called the History of Luminous Motion.
That's
band,
right.
Which was named after a book by a writer named Scott Bradfield that I think everybody should read. It's an amazing book. But anyway, we used to practice on Thursday. And one day I came in to practice, and there's a flyer on the wall for a show by a band called Four Way Anal Touchfight. And I said, what is this flyer? By the drum kit, you know? And I said, what is this flyer? And Guy says, yeah, it's this band. It's like this deep underground thing, and it's this weird band. And I said, awesome. So for a couple weeks of practice, I was like, where's this tape at? And he's like, no, you can't even get that tape, dude. It's way underground, but you're going to want to know about it. So eventually, it was like revealed that there was no band, there was no anything. It was just this flyer. Right. And all it was a skull, and instead of crossbones, it was 4 fingers pointing. Okay. And it said Four Way Anal Touchfight, and that was it. And so he somehow, I don't even know how at this point he came up with the name, but he came up with that. And it was a gag. Yeah. Okay. So for weeks I thought, that was I can't wait to hear this band. I'm going to this make some Eisters and Newbout and shit, like hardcore. Right. And then when it came revealed that it was a gag, then somehow the legend, if you will, or the myth or whatever it was of he created the band for a long time before there was any music involved.
There was no music.
I think we came to it was from Denmark because it was the only country we could think of where nobody would know that we couldn't do the accent accurately.
That's right.
Nobody knows what a Danish person is. We try to be German. Right. It's not going to be.
Right. Everybody knew what German was. Right.
And then eventually, so I decided to do the hoax on, I think, Jonah and Dave, and you guys got to hear this fucking band, Four Way Anal Touchfight, and they're from Denmark, and I actually, at that time, was trying to do a band, or not trying to do a band, but we were playing a lot with Dave Monaghan and Charlie Corey, who's in Raw Radar War, in Dave's basement. Yeah. And so as part of the gag, we created one song. Yeah. And I brought the tape to band with those guys and said, here's that band from Denmark. Yeah. And for a while, it was just about fooling people.
That's right.
Yeah. And then, strangely enough, that show I was just talking about with Today is the Day, was organized by Ron Lassard from RRR Records. His wife, Maria, organized this giant show on Halloween. 3 floors of like an abandoned building, all going at the same time. Yeah. Turn it off. Yeah. And she said, do you want to play? And I said, yeah. And at the time we were doing a lot of like noise music.
Right. Did you have like pictures or was it?
No, we had nothing at that time. Nope. And then I said, "Hey, let's put together some noise thing for this this show." Yeah. And Guy said, "Do you think we should play a Four Way Anal Touchfight show?" And I said, "I don't know. What do they do? We have no idea. It's one song on a tape." Yeah. So we decided to do it, and the next thing I knew, Dave Monaghan was like bringing a van full of people from New York who had. So this tape had circulated, and there was a lot of people that thought it was a band from Denmark. Right. And they came to Lowell on Halloween to see this band, and so we kind of had to do it.
Yeah, that
was
Halloween night, 1999.
Okay. Yeah. I remember, but it had been going on since like 1995.
Yeah.
And then we did it.
Right.
And it was really, really surreal and bizarre because it was put together pretty last minute, just thrown together to do it, and like people I didn't know were coming up to me after the show asking me to like sign shit. Right. And I was like, they're asking me like, hey, I got this cassette. Can you validate that this is really one of your tapes and not a bootleg? And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, and so it was absolutely a joke that went, it just worked somehow. Yeah.
And did you have those outfits right away? Like, did you?
Those were Guy's mom's choir robes.
Okay. Yeah, but the night that we played in 1999, that very first gig, there was no aesthetic.
Yeah. So it was.
Just we didn't know. Like, we didn't have an image of what the band was, so we just did whatever came up right then.
So that very night, Halloween night, I went to a Halloween store. Yeah. And I bought some children's costumes. Yeah. That's all I could find. Yeah. That were. He-Man Skeletor costumes with the skeleton masks. Yeah, the mask. Yeah. And they had capes and robes, right? And so I brought them to my house, and Brian and I were together, and we said, all right, we're going to put an amp together, and we're going to tape, and I had made a tape and I'd removed all the backing vocals.
Yeah.
Because
So
it
I
was a
said,
4-track, so we just took the vocals.
yeah,
off.
I took the vocals off, and I said, okay, we're going to play to this tape because we can't do the music together.
Right.
So we're going to play to this tape. That became a thing that went on eventually. But initially, we're like, all right, we've been pressed into service almost. So tonight we've got to do a show. So here's these He-Man Skeletor masks. What are we going to do to change them? And Brian and I were like, well, okay, the first thing we need to do is let's paint them. All right, so we took the masks apart and we painted them with a Danish flag. And we said, well, that's it. There we go. So we put a Danish flag on the masks, and then we said, we'll wear those and we'll wear the capes. And I've taken all the vocals off of these tapes, so we'll be able to play the tape. Here's an amplifier.
And I think
I've
we had
got
some
a tape
drums
deck.
live.
And then we said,
Drums.
well, let's take some floor toms, because we're both drummers.
Yeah.
Let's take some floor toms, and we'll do some drumming along with it, and we'll have those out in front.
Yeah.
And then we'll just kind of sing along. And we both looked at each other like, we don't even know these songs.
Yeah, we don't even know. And
we,
then
only, we only did these as a gag.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I printed out the lyrics, and I said, okay, we'll have a music stand, and we'll put the lyrics in front so we
we
can
literally
literally read
reading
the
the
lyrics,
lyrics to the
with
songs.
masks on
Yeah,
our faces. So we got to the gig, and 5 seconds before we went on, I said, let's take our shirts off. Let's go right down to just skivvies and the mask.
Because at
and
the time I was a lot heavier too, and a fat guy with no shirt is an
Right.
instant draw.
So we said,
You know,
let's
you're
take
gonna
our
have
shirts
people
off.
paying
Let's
attention.
just go down to underwear, mask, and robe, and then we'll have the floor toms in front, and we'll read the songs, and we'll play to the tape.
And what was really crazy about it was, so we're doing these songs that we've only done one time ever to
That's
make
right.
a tape that isn't a real tape.
not even a real tape.
And we're on stage doing it with lights,
That's
and there
right.
are people in the front that we don't know singing the songs
singing
back
the
at
songs
us.
back to us and wanting
And
us
we're
to
like,
sign stuff after. We're
They
like,
know the song. That's bizarre. And,
right. It had become its own thing outside of us and outside of our
yeah,
influence.
and then it just, after that too, we were really, really lucky and blessed or whatever, fortunate that a lot of our friends, like Jonah, liked it.
Yeah.
And just Jonah would say, hey, do you guys want to play with, fucking Watchmaker? We're like,
I think
Black
everybody.
Helicopter. And also, to be fair, what was awesome was in the noise scene, which is where it started with
That's
Ron
right.
and RRR and all that. Nobody got it. The noise people hated us. They didn't want us to play. They were like throwing things. The metal scene embraced us.
It was very strange.
Yeah, which is bizarre. The metal guys loved it, and
I think a lot of what happened was people wanted to see if we could do it again.
Right.
And they said, there's going to be these two guys that are going to wear masks.
And we weren't sure if we could.
It's pseudo-Danish, and it's really silly, and half the songs don't even happen because if either one of us got lost with the lyrics, we would just tackle each other.
Right.
yeah, it became the fight part. Well, the other thing that was weird about it was behind the scenes, because we're so nerdy or whatever it is, we developed this massive mythology of this band to the point of, even though it comes across as very silly, there's a lot behind what, I don't know how to put it. I'm not trying to make it sound lame, but the basic chemistry of it was the idea that these guys were from Denmark, which is so far removed from Western civilization, if you will, from the United States or whatever.
They don't
that
know Casey Kasem.
all
They
they
don't know
kn-
American Top 40.
which of course
They
is
wanna be
ridiculous
right.
because they
This
do.
team-
Those
right,
people
right.
know that shit.
Right,
I mean,
of course.
I
But
love
this-
King Diamond, right?
But this particular Danish band didn't know from that.
So all they
wanted
know
to
is
be an
you're
rock
American
band.
and you're British rock and roll,
Right.
and they don't speak English, but they want to rock,
Yeah.
and they bring it the
That's
best
right.
way they can. And that people say, well, the name, is it like a gay thing? Is it?
Right.
No, the idea is that there's two of us, and we have four fists, and we're fighting you for the love of rock and roll.
Right.
It's a fight, but not a fight of anger. It's a fight of love. I love you so much I want to kick your ass into understanding why rock is the thing. It was this big blown out thing.
Right, it was a lost in translation joke from day one
And-
Yeah,
that
of
just
course.
went for much
Yeah, it
further.
got to be this big thing, and then we played a show at the Middle East, I think upstairs with Coke Dealer
Yeah.
and Cobra Man,
Yep.
right? And what?
That's right.
Did Jonah play? What Milligram?
It might have been a milligram show. Yeah.
And
That sounds right.
and this guy who was like from Harvard
Yeah.
came up to the merch table and wanted to discuss the lyrics, and we were like, okay, and he was like, well, do you guys like know the band directly? Can I talk to the band? And Guy is like, yeah, we're the band. And he's like, well, you don't sound like you're from Denmark. And Guy goes, well, we're not Danish, but the band is. And the guy said, wait a minute, are you serious? And we said, yeah, we're not Danish, man. It's a gag,
Right.
You want a T-shirt? And he said, he became even more fascinated. He was like, listen, I'm a linguistics professor at Harvard. And I said, oh, that's awesome. And he said, nobody that doesn't understand Danish and English wrote this. And I said, I assure you, man, I don't know a word of Danish, not a word.
Yeah.
No.
And he said, no,
Neither one
listen,
of us.
and I remember him distinctly going, look, there's a dangling participle at the end of this sentence that is only put there in such, I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. The reason it is what it is because we don't know Danish.
Right.
And this guy was really angry with us
That you.
well, he had come all the way down in his jacket with the elbow, suede
Yeah.
to discuss these lyrics, and it turned out it was a gag, and he was really upset about it. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
There was a show that we played that some women from Denmark were at the show.
Oh, yeah.
It just turned out that way.
Yeah.
They were like visiting, and they saw it in the Hippo or the Phoenix or
that's
something
right.
like Four Way Anal Touchfight from Denmark.
And-
I think that was at MIT.
Yeah,
right,
and
the
so
Thirsty Year or
right
something.
whenever we would book, we never booked a gig,
Yeah.
not one time. We
No,
still to this
Jonah
day.
booked us a bunch of them.
Jonah
like-
Jenkins,
asked to do
Jonah
stuff.
Jenkins, very many times booked gigs for us, or asked us to be on.
And
the
we had a
board.
thing initially where, because it was like, it sounds crazy, but it was part of the deal. When Ron, RRR Records, put the label out, the record out on his label, part of his deal was you guys are not allowed to play a show unless I can play.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah? Okay.
So people would be like, hey, does Four Way want to play this thing? We'd be like, well, can Emil Bolio play?
Right.
And they'd be like, I don't know what
That was
is.
Ron's side project.
And
at the
if
time,
you don't know
yeah.
what that is, it was just this really awesome repetitive noise. He had this record player called the Mignotoli with 4 arms.
Yeah.
Had four
And by
tone
picking
arms.
4 grooves
Yeah.
on a record, a random record,
Yeah.
he would find 4 grooves on a record, 4 spots in the groove on a record
Yeah.
that would all work together in 4 different
It was-
songs. It's like what they call a mashup now.
Yeah.
He would
It's
be doing a
incredible,
mashup of
though.
4 tracks on one record that would create
He
He
a
would do it
looping.
Live,
Yeah.
And he could do it live, and he
It's
could do
incredible.
the same song over and over,
Over and
which
over.
didn't make any sense.
How could he do it?
And I remember saying, Ron, how do you do that? And he goes, well, I'm a professional.
Right.
And
He was very
but anyway,
good.
so mostly if people were like, oh yeah, this guy can play with his record player, you know.
They didn't care.
But then later, when we started playing with metal bands, Ron he wasn't into it.
Yeah.
He was like, no,
didn't
they're
want
going to
it.
attack. And
he was
stuff.
he was able to tap out, and that was
Yeah.
fine for us.
But yeah, we played with Gil Mantera's Party Dream.
Oh, yeah.
And we had some amazing set. We played at CBGB's, which was
Really?
brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was probably the high point of, which is insane because now that it's gone,
Yeah.
Right.
it's
even
funny.
more
I used to
poignant.
be able to use it as a thing with people that didn't know music.
Right.
And go, well, I was in a band that played at CBGB's, and that's some point of reference for
Yeah,
them to go, oh,
right.
CBGB.
The Middle East is.
But
very
now I talk to
insular.
kids and stuff, and they're like, "What's that?
Right.
Is that a clothing store in New York?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah, this particular Middle East gig, these women from Denmark came up and questioned us about whether we were from Denmark,
yeah.
and again, I gave them my
got ugly, yeah.
my patented oblique answer. Well, the band we're in is from Denmark,
but we are not
right?
Danish.
And they didn't know what to do with that, and they
Right.
kind of went away. And then an hour later into everybody else's gig, because we Logman played, and now we're watching everybody else's show, and the other bands are playing.
Playing first rules.
Yeah,
there's no pressure.
They came back to our merchandise table and bought one of everything. They bought T-shirts, albums,
So-
CDs.
and
I had these little fanzines that I'd
I
created.
still
out of
have some. I'll
nothing.
give you some before you
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
The Tid Script. We used
right,
to do
yeah.
a monthly magazine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So they bought everything.
Yeah.
And they just said we were just so fascinated about these boys from
Yeah.
Denmark, and so it's interesting.
And then
to
they
understand.
hated us. They were angry that we were posing as Danish. But
Right,
then after we
but-
played, they went back to liking
That's
it.
right. They liked it. They for some reason it really it
Which was
really
interesting,
connected.
yeah.
The metal scene in particular, which was something that we were just associated with because of our friendships.
Friends and stuff.
Embraced it like nothing else I've ever
Right.
seen.
Yeah, it was
before or
crazy
after.
because
because it made
as
no
a metalhead.
sense. It-
Well, as a metalhead myself, I totally get the idea of Jaguar or
Right.
you know, I get it.
Certainly. There you go.
Metalheads are often considered very closed-minded.
but it's
and
not
blah, blah,
true.
blah.
It's
No,
not
it's
true.
not. Yeah.
It's really not. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on there.
We found
and-
that out inherently
Yeah.
by opening for bands like Watchmaker, which
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
extremely heavy band
And I think also
at the time.
Yeah, which was awesome.
And those guys.
I think we might have played with. Did we play with Black Helicopter?
Yeah, yep, we did. And
Yeah,
and those
and-
guys, all of those
The
bands,
Wet Nurse.
right? Puny
The
Human,
Brought Low.
right?
Yeah.
All of those bands met us as equals. They said, "Oh, you're in a band," even though at no point did we bring an instrument on stage.
We played with Raw
It was
Radar
all backing
War.
tapes. I mean, it was everything. It was everything that they weren't.
What was that show with Raw Radar War and Vorvados?
Yeah,
those metal dudes, right?
That's right.
And I think what it was,
That was a
one of the best
bar.
ever. I forget what bar it was. It was awesome. It was the night we did the Hellbent for Leather cover.
Was that O'Brien's?
Awesome.
Yeah.
With
I think that was
and we played with
O'Brien's.
Village of Dead Roads.
That was O'Brien's.
And,
Yeah, that was a great show.
Nice.
And I think what it partially was that immediately when these guys would meet us, I was a deep metalhead.
That's right.
So I don't know, it was kind of like, I remember a guy coming up to us at the Milligram show and be like, "You're from Denmark, huh?" And I was like, "Denmark." And he goes, "King Diamond?" And I went, "Don't break the oath." And the next thing I knew, they brought us like a case of beer.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and I was like,
Yeah.
There
and
was
they
a
knew
brotherhood
that.
there, even though the
So
music,
they would-
the presentation, and everything that
And they
we
would
were
say,
about was
"So your
exactly
band is
the
like a
opposite.
joke, but you guys aren't a
Are the
joke. You
real-
really
right.
love music." And I was like, "Oh, we're not taking the piss.
Right.
This
It
is
was
for
meeting
real."
these
Yeah, yeah,
bands
yeah.
before and after the gigs where they really developed okay, whatever it is you're doing, we're getting a big kick out of it.
Yeah.
And everybody, there was always a lightening of the mood.
The only one that ever went really completely sour, to the point where, again, we didn't leave, we didn't stop playing, but I thought it was going to turn bad, was we played with the Shods,
Oh yeah.
and the crowd turned on us.
That particular crowd, even though
because
the
again-
band, because Kevin Stevenson
Kevin's
was a long
like one of
friend
my
of
buddies,
Brian's.
and he was like,
We
"Hey,
love
listen,
Kevin
we
to
got
death.
this record coming out." The record was called Tippy, and it was a Shods record. It was brilliant. I think everybody should go get one right now.
Yeah.
And
they
I
had
thought,
a
he
huge
goes, "Listen, these
following.
guys, the
A
Stoves are
huge
going to
following
play."
in Lowell.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of them, the Stoves.
They were fantastic.
Fantastic. This punk band that was like,
Right.
you felt like it was like the Bowery in 1970. They really did it, you know? But they were half my age.
Yeah.
And the crowd was all about the rock and roll. They were like a rock and roll crowd, and they didn't get it. And it got like ugly.
So
like
even
they were
though
throwing things and
right.
stuff. And the worse they got, the more we were determined, like, we're not leaving.
Yeah.
Right. So Kevin was a mate, and he's been a big friend, and he wouldn't hear anything else except you guys are doing this gig, and so we said, of course we are. We'd love to. We
And it
were
was
honored.
really
right?
sold out.
and it was sold out. So we're like, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
So all of our friends are there, and all of their friends are there, and it's packed and it's sold out. And so we're doing our thing, and it is not going over.
And I think we made him let Ron play.
Right. It's not going over, and it's not going over at all.
Yeah.
They hated
So
us.
so the quieter we got,
Yeah.
the more they didn't like
Yeah,
it.
of course.
So we kept trying to really back it down. So at the end of the show, our very last song, Brian and I decided, all right, I said, here with me. We brought the microphone down. We sat on the stage. So the entire sold out show couldn't see us now.
Yeah.
Now they can't see us.
And did an acoustic,
And did
played
an acoustic version,
guitar
very
version
quietly.
of the song.
So no one at all but the first row could see us, which was really driving them
Yeah, yeah.
bananas.
And it
So
was-
there was always this kind of
It was the first time I ever felt like personally. Not to be fair, I mean, I know it sounds ignorant, or not ignorant, but it sounds lame. But usually I'm at some show terrified. I'm always terrified at a show. Like,
It's
I
true.
can't go fucking be
5
Four Way
minutes,
Anal
before
Touchfight
5
at
minutes
a show.
before every show, he's
And
decided
then
not to
5
do it.
minutes into the first thing, you've got Charlie and Jonah and all these guys, your friends.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
nothing bad's going to happen to me. These
It's
guys are going
fine.
to look out for me in some way. At this show, all it was these people we didn't know, basically, getting really angry about us not being the Shods. You
Yeah.
know?
Right.
And
That's a tough crowd.
I
Like the
think-
rockabilly-ish.
Yeah.
It is.
Rock kind of crowd is tough.
it's the only time I've
They
ever
didn't-
played for them, but having gone to see Kevin lots of
Yeah.
times, you know, it's a different
And-
thing. That's a crowd where it's a thing to them, meaning they're not interested in
Right.
country or
Yeah.
jazz
And they didn't
or
like
your
us.
touch fight or your shit. They came to hear the rock.
They didn't like us. They made it known they didn't like us.
Yeah.
And so we took it down and tried to be, again, passive aggressive
Right.
and say, we're going to get real quiet and real small. And we amused ourselves in the moment.
Yeah.
And again, Kevin, outside
At
of
the
the whole
end
thing,
of it,
loved
Kevin
it.
was like,
He's
I can't believe how awesome it was.
that was awesome. And
I
then
think,
the Shods blew the doors
Yeah, of
off
course.
the show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
and
the
then
rest
they
of the
came out and
show,
did Scorpion Bowl.
I
and
mean, it was
everything.
amazing, right? It was
fine.
absolutely an incredible gig.
And I
And the
think
recordings
D-
of that gig, which
Tension, do you know him?
Yeah, the rock.
I think
Yeah.
he was supposed to play, and he decided for some reason not to. I
he
don't
tapped
remember
out.
what the
Yeah,
reason
I
was.
think he tapped out. Yeah.
But Kevin had envisioned the whole thing as this idea where it wasn't about a genre. It was about his friends.
Right.
Oh, I want Detention to do a rap set. I want you guys to do your set. Kevin always gets it, but the crowd didn't get it.
His idealism was intact, and he did what, when Jonah Jenkins would put 4 Watt together with other bands that didn't, and it would work. Kevin said, "I'm going to do the same thing," but it didn't work with his fans. He underestimated his fans' allegiance to his thing.
Yeah, and I remember the CB show being terrified. Oh yeah. For real, going. We played in the lounge, and I remember before the show while we were doing sound check and all that shit, going and asking the girl at the bar, "Hey, can I go in the big room just to go into it?"
Right.
And she was like, "Yeah." And there were some guys in there doing whatever. There was no show. It was empty. And I remember just going in that room, and it sounds probably cheesy to people, especially people that maybe grew up going to shows there.
Yeah.
But I remember just going up there on that stage and going, fucking Talking Heads fucking played here, man. And people are like, "Oh, Four Way Anal Touchfight," and it's a joke. And I'm like, I get that little twinge of pride that I shouldn't get and go, "Well, bitch, I played at fucking CBGB's."
Right.
And what it ends up being in the end of the day, what's funny about the pride thing is it's all about whether or not anybody likes it to people, but to me it's all about whether or not I like it.
Yeah, of course.
And I did something that I wanted to do, so it was a cool thing.
Right.
And that show was scary as hell because I'm not a New Yorker, so I'm like, oh, these people will throw rocks at us, man, and bottles or whatever. And we played the show. It was the only show where I physically blacked out.
He did.
Really? Yeah.
So Ian, my friend Ian, it was his birthday.
Yeah.
We played. That's the day I met Des Cadena. He was at this show, which is even crazier, right?
That's random.
And random, right? But you're like, Des Cadena's at the Four Way Anal Touchfight show, right? So we're playing, and Ian knows these people because at the time he was on MTV, so he had all these people.
Right.
And it was just an amazing time when somebody we knew, Ian, put us in a position that we never ever should have been in.
Of course.
Right.
And for some reason, we were lucky enough to win.
Right.
And after the show, I remember I said to Guy, like, "Are we going to get beat up? Like, did people hate it?" You can never tell from the stage.
Right. Yeah.
And he goes, "I don't know. The sound guy gave me our tape back, and he said, hey, ass fight. Good show."
Right.
And I said, "I think we're okay."
And I learned later from people, the staff at the clubs, that he doesn't like anything.
Oh, really?
So if he said,
So we were really proud of ourselves that
you're in,
Nice.
that he because I don't know. I felt like if the sound guy at CB's thought you were okay,
then you were
that's cool.
you were definitely
That's
that
pretty
you'd made some
Yeah.
inroads there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
that was a lot of fun.
And so now you guys are gonna put out a CD of
We're doing
stuff, is that what you're
tapes,
saying?
I think,
yeah,
right?
tapes.
Yeah, we're not sure really what it's going to happen. Last year, I made a commitment online that we'd be remastering the old stuff.
Okay.
The commitment's the worst. And now you're stuck with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wanted to keep to that.
Yeah.
And life gets in the way.
Yeah, of course.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But all that stuff remains with me, and it's all in good shape.
Yeah.
I've listened to it. I've sessioned it. It's all fine.
Yeah.
And so I realized, well, you know what? 2019. It's another year for the few people that care about it.
Yeah.
For some, 2019 becomes a nice equal year.
Yeah, yeah.
So 1999 is when it all really started.
Right. Oh yeah.
So we got a 20-year anniversary in 2019.
Yeah.
So at any point during this year, and I'm starting to remaster the stuff now, I've got
Yeah.
all the equipment, and I've certainly have enough technical acumen
Right.
to be able to do it all,
Yeah, yeah.
to get all the B-sides
Right.
unearthed too.
Yeah,
You know,
of course.
Brian and I wrote plenty of songs that made us both laugh.
Right. Right.
That never made the light of
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
That people should hear because
Yeah,
it's
of
just for
course.
fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So back then, I probably would have been a lot more, ironically, I would have been a lot more precious about it,
Right,
even though
right.
it was funny.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
now, anything goes.
Yeah, yeah, of
so
course.
everything will come
Yeah,
out. So
definitely.
so those are due.
Yeah.
And then, of course, is the inevitable talk about, whether there's any way.
I
that we
want to
can-
do something. Is this cool with you? We'll do it live on the air. So to
Sure,
speak.
Brian.
Nobody's been allowed to see it. I'm going to show them the album cover, the live record.
Yeah, go
Because
right
he will
ahead.
get it.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So we certainly want to put out other stuff too.
Right, right.
There's been we've recorded almost every live show that we've
Yeah.
ever done,
Nice.
and some of them are in better shape than
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
Sure.
Nice.
But again, because I have so much studio,
He might get it. He might not. So we haven't told anybody because we wanted to have the impact when we do it.
Right.
yeah.
This is going to be the live record.
Oh, of course I get. That's amazing.
So he's looking at something that looks like Exit Stage Live from Rush. So there you go. I mean, that goes right back. Right, that goes right back to ground zero for us.
That's perfect.
And because I have a lot of studio miles under my belt now, that live stuff, some of which is really rough, can now be brought up and be listenable.
Nice.
So
I love that too, and I bet I'm sure Christian does too, as a punk dude or a hardcore dude. Yeah. Sometimes, right, the grosser the recording is, the better it is.
Yeah. That's right. If it's really raw, but you can still, it's listenable. Then you need to get. Again, a lot of bands get very precious about their stuff. And, you know, Rush is one of those bands. You know, they've been really, really. There's nothing in the vault. There's nothing in the lockers.
We talked about how bummer the reissues are with the changed art.
Yeah.
And everything's got 2112 on it. And he was lamenting about the Who does the same thing with Tommy.
Yeah, there's like 40 live.
Right.
And I think personally, like, I'm not a giant Who guy, but I don't understand why Tommy gets all the
Quadrophenia.
Right? That's what I was gonna say. It's so much.
I have a Tommy tattoo on my arm.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. Quadrophenia to me is so much fucking cooler.
Oh, yeah.
Or
I relate to that.
But I can see why.
I relate to it.
And I can see bands from both perspectives, you know, as being in a band myself, you could say, look, I get very precious about this and I want to protect it. And then I'm like, who cares?
Right.
I'm just going to put it all out and everything in between.
One thing I
get both sides.
Yeah, one thing that you said that really made a difference, impacted me a few minutes ago, was you said something about staying positive. And Christian and I were talking about that before you showed up. The idea that I don't like a band, I don't hate it, and I'm not averse to trying to like it. You know, I'm never a hater, so to speak.
Right.
Like, I always want somebody to...
Oh, but there's bands you hate.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure there is. But what I mean is, like, I want somebody to come up to me with something I don't like.
Right.
And I don't want to go fuck yourself. That's the worst. I want them to show me why I'm missing out.
Let me tell you why.
Those kind of discussions. And like, to sort of wind down this episode.
How long has it been now? 19 years? Do we have to, like, cut this into pieces?
No.
We could make it a serial.
Whatever you want, right.
No. The last one I did was 2.5 hours. So.
Wow.
But to sort of wind it down,
yes,
we kind of talked about before, and one of the things I've been thinking about with this podcast is, like you were just saying, how you made sort of an announcement you were going to reissue your stuff, and then
that's right.
You realize, like, life happens.
Now we have to do it.
Yeah. So with this podcast, when I started it, I said I'm going to put one out every Tuesday. And I did that for a while. Yeah. And then it just, same kind of thing, life happens. And
life is the worst.
Trying to get people scheduled has been sort of hard here and there, so... I've been thinking of different ideas and one of them, like, that we kind of talked about before this, was getting together with you two and different ideas, like talk about albums, talk about
pick
bands,
a specific album.
So that's something like we're going to definitely do.
I would love to do that. One of the things I want to say, and this is really funny, it's hard to say without being awkward about it, right, is one of the things I love about this is that I consider you doing this podcast as, for you, this is a creative endeavor. Yeah. It's like having a band or having a comic. Yeah. And I'm just, honestly, I really, really mean this. It means so much to me that you asked us to do it, because you're sharing that precious time you have to do your creative thing with us. And that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Because this is what keeps me, literally keeps me going, is this shit.
Well, when I first started, I made a list of people I wanted to talk to.
Right.
And I still have on my phone.
And now, do you still have a bucket list you haven't done yet?
There's a bucket list of a few people. But I remember I messaged you, and I remember you said something to the lines of, like, you know, nobody knows who I am. Like, why would they care? You know. But part of me was like, I want to talk to people that are, you know. And for a minute, I was thinking, like, okay, I just want to kind of have musicians people know about. But then I'm like, what's the point of that when you can get people that are going to...
Well, that's the thing, is
especially like-minded.
And having listened to a bunch of your shows, you know, or podcasts or whatever they're called, I'm a computer illiterate, so... I feel, this is really crazy to me. I feel like a celebrity. Like, we're in, like, some pretty esteemed company with other people you've talked to, like... You know what I mean? Like, wow, you know, like, the dude that talked to so-and-so wants to talk to me. That's cool. You know?
I think it'll be... I think it's just as important to talk to.
Well, you know, what's funny is I've learned...
If someone's a household.
Well, like I said, I got started on everything that I'm involved in right now from a crappy AM radio station out of Lowell.
That's right.
Yeah. And shit that nobody will ever care about in a million years could be the spark that sets somebody off. And that's what has always got me when, like, some kid is like, I like this band, and people are like, that band's lame or whatever.
Right.
I'm like, no, that is that dude's Rush. Like, that kid's
Yeah,
fire
like,
inside. One that I've taken a lot of heat for over the years, for decades, was I loved Linkin Park.
Yeah.
And you're part of the scene.
Right.
If you like underground hardcore noise, you don't like Linkin Park. And I'm
Yeah.
like, there's something about it that I really like, that I find genuine. And
There's a lot of those.
I've never been the guy who has, when people go, name your guilty pleasures, I'm like, I can tell you what they are,
Right.
but I'm not guilty
I
about
don't
it.
have any.
Yeah, same here. I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I don't
Duncan-
know.
Exactly.
Duncan
Or,
Sheik.
I stopped
Yeah,
at one
right.
point, but I love the
Right.
Foo Fighters.
Right.
A lot of their stuff. And
yeah, well,
I mean,
I think all three of us could name a lot of it. Like
Yeah.
for me, Duncan Sheik is certainly
Yeah.
one of the ones that comes to the top of the
Yeah.
mind. People think of a hit single, one hit.
although I
wonder.
would argue that he's been out of the public eye for so long
Sure.
that people don't even know what it is now.
But he's a one-hit wonder to
Yeah.
most people.
that one record with the story, the concept record about the lighthouse and the
Right.
ghost is insane.
Yeah. Whisper House, right? Yeah.
Well, Christian and I talked about that too, about the idea of the one-hit wonder. We talked about the Fix. We talked
Yeah.
about Big Country, about these bands that people are like, was that guy? But then there's some that never come back, like Richard Marx has
Right.
never bit me, where I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, Richard Marx.
Right.
But,
Gotta deep dive into his catalog.
I was talking about one not too long ago with John Sandler about Terrence Trent D'Arby.
Yeah.
Like, why is Terrence Trent D'Arby not? I hate to use this analogy right now because of what's going on with the documentary and everything, but why is he not fucking Michael Jackson?
Right.
Why is he not Lenny Kravitz? And
Yeah.
I don't mean those people. Why is Terrence Trent D'Arby not
Up
fucking
there.
R. Kelly?
Right.
Why? This dude is.
Probably because he's a horrible person.
Maybe he is. I don't know.
I'm
the dude
just kidding.
personally. I have that too. That's
Right.
a weird
See,
thing.
now-
The people that suck, that maybe they're like
Right.
politically against you, whatever, but you still like their record. That's
Yeah.
always a weird
For
thing.
sure.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Terrence Trent D'Arby was one of those things that, my friends in high school teased me with. Because remember, Brian, you and I went to different high schools for a while. And I never liked him, and I never made peace with that.
That's
And
okay.
so he's
Well,
always been one of
it's
those
fine.
guys that I've been like, oh, that's a guy I can just hate on, right?
Sure,
But
I'm
that-
okay with that.
But that's my convenience, right? I could actually dig into his album.
Well, that was just an example of one of those things
Right,
where
right.
something was a one-hit thing
For
to
sure,
somebody.
yeah.
And I'm also surprised a lot by who people think is a one-hit wonder that
Right.
not to me.
Yeah.
I
Right.
had somebody recently ask me about if I thought the B-52s was a one-hit wonder, and I
Right.
said,
Like a
No.
6-hit wonder.
I said, what are you talking
Right,
about? The
they've got
B-52s
too many
are
hits, and
gigantic. And they're like, no,
they-
the Rock Lobster, right? And I'm like,
been
what are
along
you
too many
talking
decades.
about?
That's
Did you
right.
miss?
Even if you don't like them,
Yeah.
they've been
And
around
they
for
had
too
Rome
long.
years later.
Oh, I mean,
Love
they were-
Shack, all that stuff.
They
It's
were
like talking
giant
about the
for-
Talking Heads as
Right.
one-hit wonders. It's silly.
Yeah. So it's all perspective. Like right now,
Yep.
the big thing is obviously at work. I can't get away from the what they call country now.
Yeah.
And by saying that, I don't mean to
Right.
discredit it.
I understand.
It sounds like pop music with a guy drawling over it to me. It doesn't sound like country.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
country. Right.
And also that country and western has become one thing now, when to me it's two different things.
Right.
But we got a guy at work. He loves. I'm ignorant of what these people's who they are, but
Right.
these country people.
Yeah.
And I'm in a position going, well, let me show you this country record.
Right.
But he doesn't care. He wants to hear the
Yeah.
guy that sang with
People
Lady
wanna hear
Gaga
what they
on
want,
that
right.
on that
That's right.
film soundtrack.
That's right.
So yeah, we'll probably continue to talk after
some
I hit stop
point.
here.
Yeah, no doubt.
But we're gonna do this, and we're gonna hopefully have some cool episodes, and hopefully
I would think so. We're
This
going
was-
to turn
this was
this into
great
something
fun,
else.
Chris.
This
Yeah,
is
I
amazing.
appreciate it.
Again,
Yeah.
thank you so
Yeah,
much. This
definitely. I
is
appreciate
brilliant.
you guys doing it.
Had a blast.